The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome in Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner, Elliot Ruring, Jacob Tissett, and Casey McAllister with you here. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and, of course, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Mr. Casey McAllister, I realized when I went back and watched yesterday, I called you Casey McAllister. Glad that after about 7 months of working together, I finally got the name right. So, Casey McAllister, welcome in, sir. How are you? I practiced your name the whole way here to make sure I got it right.
He's not a sub shop. He's a producer.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty much used to it, to be honest with you, Kenner. My whole life I've had teachers, coaches, McAllister. So I'm used to it. Don't worry. I'm used to it.
You are the first McAllister I've ever heard of.
McAllister's not very common.
Well, your family just definitely messed that up at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are a McAllister.
Probably.
Okay.
I think someone just didn't know how to spell, probably in like the 1800s, and they just put an O instead of an A. Or maybe they just are a terrible writer and they
Chicken scratch.
Yeah, chicken scratch.
That Blanchester chicken scratch. You couldn't see the O from the A.
Yeah, they've just said CALL sounds like call instead of cow. Yeah.
I like the uniqueness.
Yeah, I like it too.
It's good stuff.
So a lot's changed since the last time I was here. I noticed when I got in, I'm like, it's a little warm. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, the heat. The heat works. I haven't seen the puffer jacket in a while from our guy, Casey McAllister over here. Yes, the heat works in here again. That's
it's nice. It's
not again for the first time, I believe, in my 2 years. I believe this is the very first time. So shout out to our heat guy that came in on a timely matter.
During the show.
During the show, actually. Yeah, it was
not the most timely matter, but
there was a ladder up during 3 shows. So,
but it's almost like we work inside now. So that's a huge positive.
Heading into the spring.
That's right.
That's
right.
Good thing.
No, good timing.
But Elliot, good morning. How are we?
I'm good. I'm great. I'm ready to roll, baby.
What about you, Jacob?
I don't know. Listen, there wasn't anything on last night. This is the part of the sports calendar that's like, I want to watch college basketball, but last night I was looking at the schedule, and the only good college basketball game was bumped for Luka and the Lakers.
That game was fun.
So it was with the Lakers game?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was fun. It was a blowout.
I got to see Luka and LeBron play together.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. But yeah, I was like, this is the part of the sports here where it's like I'm going to focus on Netflix. I'm gonna focus on my TV and movie watching.
So how much of that
Great
Lakers game
tonight,
did you watch?
It's a phenomenal slate tonight. How much of which the Luka game?
Yeah,
not very much. I watched the first half, maybe not even the first half, really the first quarter. I just wanted to see my guy with the Lakers. So good for that. I'm happy. I'm happy for Luka. I'm hoping that he likes it there more than Dallas, because God knows they kicked him and ran him out of town. So for very healthy superstar Anthony Davis, I can't emphasize they wanted to prioritize health, and they went and got the most healthy guy that I know of, Anthony Davis.
He's out for a month.
Indefinitely is what I saw.
Well, yeah.
I saw
at
least a month. I saw indefinitely.
And
so
the
that
one I saw
forever.
today could require, depending on how this next month of recovery goes, could require season-ending surgery.
Oh, good. At least he's not fat.
That's true. It's all about
At least
the fat.
he's not 25, the best scorer in the league.
It's all about the fat.
Do you see how they're handling stuff over there, though? So they put fans back on the Jumbotron. What do they call that? Is it Jumbotron?
I saw this. This is hilarious.
And I don't know. It was like a sing-along thing or whatever, I guess, or a karaoke little, between a dead ball situation. Some fan just looked into the camera and said, "Fire Nico." And so they kicked him out. They literally kicked him out for saying that.
Well, I mean, you can't say that if they're offering you $2,000 refunds. So if you're not going to take your refunds, you got to go and you got to cheer.
There was probably some stipulations. With
there probably was. I saw it was in my headline. Shout out to my headlines. But any fan with any sort of Fire Nico sign, like if you brought in a sign, and they saw you were kicked out.
Wow.
There's no one there checking signs when you walk in.
Oh yeah.
So if he gets past security with that sign, that's on the security guy, right? I mean, if you've earned it, if you were able to get through enough security to get to that seat and hold that up, I don't know. I think it's a little much.
Well, it's almost like who could have seen all this bad reaction to this move happen? Like, who could have seen this coming?
I mean, there is no precedent for how a fan base reacts to trading the third best player in the league at 25 years old.
Yeah,
because it's so stupid. No one's ever done it.
Yeah,
before.
no one's ever done it before.
Right.
I guess that's a good point. But yeah, like I think the Mavericks are shocked that the fans don't like it.
Yeah,
Whoa.
they're blown away.
Whoa.
Well, there's a lot of weird stuff coming out of that. There's like media beef in Dallas. So there's this one reporter for ESPN, I think Tim McMenamin or whatever. I can't remember his name, but he'd come out and say things are getting really ugly, that there's death threats being made towards Nico. Well, there's another reporter in Dallas that was like, I mean, how do you know if, I mean, is he just saying that? So that reporter called the local police station to ask, to verify, hey, are there actual death threats being made towards Nico? And they said, no, there are 0 death threats being made towards Nico, or at least 0 that have been reported. So it's one of those things where you're reading crazy stuff on social media and saying that there's death threats being made. Yeah. And I guess you could base it off of that. But so now there's media calling the other guy a fake media, blah, blah, blah. It's just, I love drama.
Everyone's
Drama's
coming at
fun.
Nico, but Mavericks owner, Governor Patrick Dumont, had a quote that was a real doozy about the Luka trade. He said, if you look at the greats in this league, the people you and I grew up with, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, they worked really hard every day with a singular focus to win. And if you don't have that, it doesn't work. And if you don't have that, you shouldn't be a part of the Dallas Mavericks. Noted hard worker Shaquille O'Neal.
I think it's mind-boggling. What's going on there, and it's pretty sad for any fan of the Dallas Mavericks.
I'm late to the party on this. Like, they traded Luka. Okay. I don't know why it took me a few days for it to really sink in, just the significance of that. I don't know why I was late to that. Like, I knew it was a big deal. Don't get me wrong. It's a big name. But, like, in his prime, like, it's
arguably
not like
before his prime.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where it did settle in last night, too. I'm like, the Lakers are just so damn lucky. Like, they are, honest to God, lucky. Now, there's all those conspiracy theories out there that the league kind of, worked with Nico to kind of push this because, I mean, last night, I will tell you, was the first time that I made sure I stayed up to watch an NBA game for a long time. And I watch the NBA, but I don't watch the NBA. I am not going to, NFL Sundays, I'm finding my team and I'm stopping what I'm doing to make sure I'm available to watch my team. I used to be like that with the NBA all the time. I don't know it's been a while. And last night I made sure I was available to watch Luka and to watch the Lakers, and I was like genuinely interested. You talked about it being a blowout. I was locked in for.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds funny. I was locked in for the first half.
Yeah.
It started
Get them to the
it
East
started at
Coast, baby.
10:40.
Get them to
That's
the
the
East
other
Coast.
thing.
Like,
Well,
yeah.
and they don't start NBA. I don't understand why they don't start the games on time. Like, if the listed time is 7, why does every single game start at 7:11? Or like
That's
like
rich
last
coming
night
from
it was-
us, but yes, I see your point.
Yeah, we can't do this.
Like last night was 10:30 and it started at 10:40. It's like, come on.
Like, kudos to baseball. A 7:07 first pitch. A
Yeah, they got all the
7:10
weird.
first
They got all
pitch.
the weird starts. College basketball kind of does that too.
But they
Tournament especially.
Yeah.
We do, because we carry local college basketball on our station, and we have to time it up just right. And ESPN will say the game tips off at 7, but no, it's a 7:02 tip-off time. Like that 7 o'clock is when the broadcast technically starts, but 7:02 is the tip-off time, and it drives me nuts. But yeah, very strange. But they stick to it.
Correct.
They stick to it. But you're right. The NBA, NFL. Well, no, NFL's pretty locked in too, right?
NFL's pretty good.
NFL starts right.
So the
on time.
NBA stinks.
Yeah.
Is what we agree. Hey, I don't know what's left, but let's send it to our guy for Elliot's headlines, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
College basketball, 6th ranked. That was a hard cutoff.
I did not like that.
That was a hard cutoff. Oh, it's down below.
See, but it sounded like a hard cut.
It was just an out.
And we can't have that, Casey. So we're gonna have to run the headlines intro again and get it right.
Come on,
No, we're not.
McAllister.
No, we're not.
Come on, McAllister. Get it together.
6th ranked Houston, they won 76-65 at home against Baylor last night. 23rd ranked Clemson, they dismantled North Carolina. Victor Locken, how about this guy? Back-to-back games leading the Tigers. Victor Locken led all scorers with 22 points again. Pretty sad if you're a Bearcats fan, but anyway, moving on. FAU, they win 87-75 over Charlotte. That game really didn't have any significance, but FAU was kind of good a little bit ago. Tonight, Bearcats take on Utah as 9-point favorites at home. Number 1 Auburn, they travel to Vandy as 9-point favorites. 5th-ranked Tennessee, they look for revenge against 15th-ranked Kentucky and Rupp. And 7th-ranked Purdue on the road against 20th-ranked Michigan. Number 4th, 3rd or 4th-ranked Alabama. Are they 3rd now? Second-ranked Alabama.
First in the coaches poll.
They play Texas tonight as well. So those are some interesting college basketball games. There's some more too. It's a good slate. NBA, we kind of talked about it. Lakers, they destroyed the Jazz. 14 points, 5 boards, 4 assists for Luka. The Mavericks, on the other hand, they lose to the Kings 129-128 in overtime. 2-3 since trading Luka. Anybody with a fire Nico sign or anything resembling it was kicked out of the stadium.
Will every Lakers score be accompanied by a Mavericks score for the rest of the year?
100%.
Sounds good.
100% it will. The Cavaliers, they crushed the Timberwolves 128-107. Mobley led all scorers with 28. Edwards had 44 in the loss. But those are your headlines.
When you asked about will every Lakers score be tied to the Mavs score, it's taking me back to this past NFL season where every Bengals game was tied to a Joe Mixon game. Like it's just
true.
Like, oh,
that's true.
Oh,
And the
Bengals
inverse.
Barely rushed. They couldn't run the football today. Let's check in for the Texans. Oh, look, there's Joe Mixon, another 100-yard game and 2 touchdown performance for the former Bengal. But not as drastic. But some other news. Andy Reid. Nope, never mind. I'm not going there. I think I just got, so I'm not going to read that.
Oh,
It's
no.
a fake
Oh,
Adam,
no.
It's a fake Adam Schefter one. So
Oh, no.
I was like, according to ESPN's Adam Scheffler, damn it.
Oh,
We're
you
moving
caught it
on.
in real time. That's
Yes,
pretty good.
I did, thank God. You want to know what I thought it was, though?
If you were to have gotten got, what would you have shared with
If I
our
was
viewers?
to have gotten got, this is fake news, okay? But according to ESPN's Adam Scheffler, not to be mistaken for Adam Schefter, which I did, DeAndre Hopkins retiring after 11 years. But then again, I could see it.
That's a bad fake report because, like, he probably will, or at least might.
I mean, he dropped. I mean, he cost him the game.
Yeah.
So.
And now tens and tens of people have heard this fake news on Off the Bench here today, nonetheless. But Ohio State football, their defensive coordinator, you sent it in the group yesterday. I think we're thinking too small with Luke Fickell.
Pencil boy.
I still think, yes, I still
Skinny
think Luke
now.
Fickell could
Is he?
potentially
Yeah, good for him.
be in the mix, but apparently it's Matt Patricia is being rumored to be the Ohio State's next defensive coordinator. Now, Silver Bulletin, I think that's that student newspaper for Ohio State that put that out, but Matt Patricia, where are we at with this?
I could be
People are not happy about it. I'll say that.
I don't necessarily understand why. I mean, I understand why. He was a terrible head coach in Detroit.
he was pretty bad.
He was an unbelievable defensive coordinator in New England, obviously 6 years under Belichick. And I mean, we were talking about when we were going through the Bengals' potential hires, getting someone from that Belichick tree, especially on the defensive side of the football, is usually a pretty good way to go. And I think there's a lot of NFL coordinators, not even the best of the best, that probably could run circles around most of the college coordinators. So I think going up to the NFL ranks and getting a guy who's established himself as one of the better defensive minds, at least a little bit ago in the NFL, I think that's a pretty good hire. I'd be excited about a Matt Patricia hire. I think that continues the model of Ohio State filling these voids and the coaching staff with going as big as they possibly can.
When was the last time he coached? Did he coach in college?
I don't believe so. He was on the Eagles defensive staff last year. Was the last time he was officially.
This reminds me of like that Bill O'Brien run, like Bill O'Brien with Alabama and then Ohio State, and like this reminds me of that too. Look, I feel like the two programs you go to resurrect your NFL career, I feel like it's Alabama and Ohio State at this point. Now, I thought it was more tied to Nick Saban and Urban, but and maybe it was more towards Nick Saban. I'll be curious to see if Alabama starts to continue to, if that's the spot to go to resurrect your brand or your career to kind of get that going again. But other coordinator news, if you will, the Dallas Cowboys are working to hire former Bills and Browns offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. Again, the deal's not done yet, but my goodness, I'm not a fan. I've never been a Ken Dorsey guy. I thought that one of the Browns' biggest mistakes, and they make a lot of them, was the Ken Dorsey route last year. I have no clue. I was not a fan of that whatsoever. And it's not just that it didn't work in Cleveland. It's that it didn't work in Buffalo. And then you add the fact that when he left, Buffalo got better with less weapons.
Right.
That, to me, I don't know why. I mean, the Cowboys, Jerry Jones is really bad right now. I've always been a Jerry Jones defender in some perspective, but he has been on a roll as of late of really propping up the Browns and some other franchises as not being as poorly run, considering the resources they have. I just don't get it. I think that's a very bad move, if you ask me.
They asked Jerry Jones if these moves are win now moves, and he said they wouldn't be making any moves like signing a quarterback to a $60 million extension if they weren't trying to win now. So he's continuing to emphasize that this is their window. They are winning now, and that quote unquote championship drought maybe that ends.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about that Super Bowl real quick when we come back. I thought the Super Bowl, that was one of my least favorite Super Bowls ever. I thought the game was just boring. I thought the build-up to it was just kind of The halftime show was okay. It was solid for me, but it wasn't the best. I thought the commercials kind of sucked. I was thinking, man, the ratings for this can't be great, right? Well, let's talk about those ratings when we come back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ring, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Before we move on, I want to give our guy Craig Sandlin a happy birthday.
Absolutely.
Whoa.
The wrench.
Happy birthday. Yes. Our chat loves to say, give out fake happy birthdays
That's
all the
right.
time. I think today's Mark's 200th birthday of
Molly
the year.
for the third
Molly
time
as
this
well.
week.
Molly
Yeah.
Molly third time this week on Tuesday. Listen, so this is a real birthday, so happy birthday, Craig. We have a super chat from Everett, $5. Happy birthday, Craig. Kinner, have you wished Craig a happy birthday?
I just did.
He just did.
I don't need to be
He
told.
just did.
I don't need to
that.
be told
Look
to
at
tell my
that.
best friend happy birthday. I mean, me and Craig are going out for drinks right after the show today.
1202 drinks. the Kinner
Bottomless
special.
mimosas, baby. Bottomless mimosas. Me and Craig. There
we go.
Hit Hamilton afterwards.
Justin Edgel, member for 16 months. Wow, that's a long time. Justin,
long
thank
time.
you. Another smoke break, question mark.
They do think it's just smoke breaks when we do the radio breaks.
I don't smoke. I used to smoke when I drink, but I don't smoke anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't count if you're drinking.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Just throwing it out there. Anything else? We got any more super chats?
That's it for at this very second.
Not yet.
But who knows?
We'll let you know.
Usually once one happens, there's a couple
I'm
more.
not gonna lie. Every
so-
time Casey says, "Hey, we got a super chat," my stomach drops. I'm like, "What I do? What name am I being called? What I do?" But no, just happy birthday, Craig. There you go. Hey, so I don't know if you guys saw this, but the Super Bowl, which I was not like a huge. I thought it was a horrible Super Bowl, to be quite honest with you. It was the highest rated Super Bowl ever.
Yeah.
The highest Super Bowl rated ever, and that just proves right there that the NFL is king. No matter how big college football gets, no matter how impressive it is that the NBA dominated a week of coverage, no matter how fun baseball can be at times, no matter how big Caitlin Clark is in the WNBA when it comes to basketball, it doesn't matter. The NFL is king. The product doesn't even have to be good on that particular day. The Super Bowl is king. Everybody tuned in. It's the most impressive thing in this country when it comes to sports. It's unbelievable. I can't believe that was the highest rated Super Bowl ever.
Yeah, I was surprised by that number.
I'm not shocked because it's of how big those fan bases are, but I think that if you had to go back in the past, I know the Bengals and the Rams, that Super Bowl was one of the lowest rated ever.
Yeah.
I just I don't get that. I wonder what the difference is between bringing casual viewers in, because every NFL fan's going to watch the Super Bowl no matter what. So you can count 100 million right off the bat. It's just the extra million. Who's coming in and why? Is it because of Kendrick? Is it because of Taylor Swift? I really don't understand it. But I feel like yesterday wouldn't have been the number one game. I don't know why. I don't think that brought the juice.
Is this like quarterback contracts, where it's just like the next one, as long as it's not the Rams and the
Yeah.
Bengals? The next one's just always going to be the biggest Super Bowl?
That's what I think it is. As long as one of the cities has
Right.
Philadelphia's massive, and Philadelphia, literally every human probably in Philadelphia watched that game. So.
Kevin P. in our chat with a great point. The Swiftie bump.
I think there is a Swiftie bump. I do think there is a Swiftie bump whenever Kelsey is there. So I don't know. I don't know what the difference is really, because I'm more interested when teams that I don't know are playing in it. Like not teams that I don't know. Teams that are fighting for their first Super Bowl. Like if it was Bills versus Lions, to me, it probably wouldn't be the highest rated Super Bowl on paper, but for me it should be because I'm more interested in that story than I would be in whoever wins the Eagles and Chiefs. But
and that just it fits the narrative. By the way, everyone that says dynasties kill sports, that has never been more false. Especially when I think we've talked about this many times. I mean, the Miami Heat killed the NBA, but it was one of the highest rated runs in the NBA. And then the LeBron getting to 8-9 straight Eastern Conference Finals or whatever it was, and it's ruining the NBA. You already know who's going to be there, and the same thing with the Golden State Warriors. And then since then, I think they've had seven different NBA champions since then, and ratings have plummeted. I think you need that big bad, evil empire to root up against, and that's the Chiefs. By the way, the Eagles had a home game this past weekend. That's one thing we didn't even mention yesterday. Taylor Swift got absolutely immersed. Everyone's like, I can't believe Taylor Swift got booed. I'm like, it was the Eagles' home game, basically. Of course she was going to get booed. She was representing the other team. So, everyone was wanting the Chiefs to lose, and I think people tuned in and enjoyed watching it. I think that's really what it comes down to as well, because we were technically tuning in to see something we've never seen before, and that's a team three-peat. But I think people also tuned in to see something that we rarely see, which is not just the Chiefs losing, but getting beat down the way that they did.
Yeah.
I think that played a little bit of a role, too. Now, let's be clear. None of us – when was the point where you realized they're not coming back? Because I'm not going to lie to you. Even in the fourth quarter, the start of the fourth quarter, they had a drive that they stalled at about 2 minutes in the third quarter, where had they converted that first down, it would have extended the drive. They could have scored, and it would have been about a 3-possession game. I was still buying into them making some crazy comeback. I'm like, it's Patrick Mahomes. You know how this goes. We know how this movie's going to end. It's going to be controversial. At what point did you realize, all right, this isn't happening?
The first 3 and out in the second half, as you go into halftime, you're down 24-0. It's like, okay, the game is teetering. You have no room for error. This is it. This is the last moment you have, and they come out and fall flat once again. So the first 3 and out, I knew it was done because they hadn't done anything up until that point, and they didn't do anything after. Again, I don't count any single point that occurred after 34-0. So
mine was that Zach Bond pick.
That's
the
probably
Cooper DeJean interception was obviously a crazy play, but then as soon as you turn around and throw the interception to Zach Bond right there inside the 10-yard line, at least in the red zone, and then the Eagles turned around and scored in, I want to say, 2 or 3 plays. That's when it was over for me. I know we've seen 28-3, 25 points, but 24-0, especially with how the Chiefs were playing at that point, didn't feel like it was possible.
Again, 126 million viewers. Its peak audience was 135 million. And again, that was projected about that 8 o'clock time frame in the second quarter, according to this graphic here. But yes, 126 million viewers up from last season. And they have Jacob's guy Jalen Hurts on the graphic, holding the trophy and, just smiling at it, just admiring it, knowing that he has done something that guys like Jacob thought he couldn't do, and that's go win the Super Bowl.
That's true.
He thought he could be the quarterback on a team that wins the Super Bowl, but the guy to go win the Super Bowl, he did a pretty good job.
It would have been close with that Eagles roster.
Yeah.
If I was out there.
I would have loved to see Kenny Pickett.
would have been
Put
close.
Kenny Pickett from the beginning. Let's see if they can run it back.
That is my favorite thing, though. I had a couple people say that. It was in the comments, mostly on TikTok, that were, he just won a Super Bowl. You could never do that.
Yeah.
Correct. Let's just get that out there. I couldn't play quarterback in the NFL.
You aren't a Division I superstar that then went to the NFL to be professional. You aren't that.
Another true statement.
You are not.
Round of applause to those people for the deductive reasoning.
Yeah.
But my favorite are those same people that, well, you're not a former NFL player. What do you know? I'm like, so your opinion saying that he can. My opinion is that he can't. But my opinion's wrong because I've never played, but you've never played, but you're right because you have a positive opinion about this.
That's right.
That never, yeah. And then I do the same thing.
Don't you understand?
Yeah, like coaches and athletes, when they do that too, like they'll look at guys like us and say, well, you guys aren't athletes. Who cares? Guys have never played. Who cares what they have to say? If we are talking about how great you are or how great your team is, you value our opinion. All of a sudden, we're great at what we do. The second we criticize your team or criticize that athlete, well, what do they know? Only our bad opinions are because we've never played sports before, but they like our opinions if they're positive about them. They always move that goalpost.
You're right.
As far as that goes. But I'm curious. So Jalen Hurts, where does he rank? Because you were right. You called it the overreaction to the Jalen Hurts Super Bowl, not just winning the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl MVP thing really made
Right.
that a little murky.
Yeah.
And I thought he was great. 300 total yards, three total touchdowns. He had the pick, but I think the final QB rating was about 114. I mean, he was lights out. He deserved the MVP, no doubt. The defense was great, yes, but there was a lot of throws he made that just kept extending drives and just continued to put the pressure on that Chiefs defense. I want to go through. We'll start in the AFC. How many quarterbacks to really get a feel for just where you stack Jalen Hurts up? I want to go QB by QB and see how many
right.
QBs you would actually take over Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Let's start in the AFC East. Josh Allen.
No question about it.
I think, yeah, you're taking, Josh Allen. How about the Miami Dolphins and Tua? Are you taking Tua or are you taking Jalen Hurts?
This is where it gets crazy.
I would take Tua. I
That's
know
crazy.
a lot of people would say Jalen Hurts.
It's
Obviously,
crazy.
injuries, but yeah, I think Tua's definitely a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. Obviously now you can't really say much about that because Hurts won and Tua hasn't won a playoff game. But yeah, I have another guy on here that hasn't won a playoff game that I would take above Jalen Hurts. So I would say Tua. But I think that's right about the line where Jalen Hurts is at, is the Tua level quarterbacks.
I don't think Tua and Jalen are in the same universe. I mean, this guy won a Super Bowl. I argued this with Jacob yesterday because we basically played the same game off air, and when he said this is really the only one I have a big issue with. Maybe one other one, but this is the one where I was like, I mean, Tua, you have to constantly worry about his health. You don't know what his future is. It's completely uncertain, and not to mention he hasn't really won anything. He hasn't won significant games, so I'm not going to sit here and say that guy's better than Jalen Hurts.
And I see why it's close because Tua, when he's healthy, he's usually healthy. He gets unhealthy around that midway point of the season. But more times than not, he's been an MVP candidate at about the halfway point of the season, and then an injury happens, a concussion happens, and then all of a sudden the play is impacted down the stretch. But I see why why people think that's little controversial. I see why you have Tua. I would still take Jalen Hurts, but that would be a close one.
That's the region I have him in. I can absolutely understand why people would take Jalen Hurts. I just think it's a little bit crazy that people think it's nuts to have Tua above him. I think that's right about where he should be.
Let's go to Drake May with the New England Patriots.
No, not yet.
Not yet. All right. So, and then the Jets don't even have a quarterback at this point.
So absolutely not.
So that if you look at the AFC East, you would take two quarterbacks of the AFC East over Jalen Hurts, and that's Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa. Let's go to the AFC South. Let's go to C.J. Stroud. Would you take C.J. Stroud over Jalen Hurts?
I would. I would take C.J. Stroud over Jalen Hurts. I think obviously he had a down year this year, but I think last year he was incredible. We were talking about him in kind of the same way we're talking about Jalen Hurts now at this point last season. So I think he's a much, much better passer than Jalen Hurts. And, I would absolutely take C.J. Stroud.
What about you? Would you take Stroud over?
No, I take the Super Bowl champion. I'm going to take the Super Bowl champion over pretty much every non-Super Bowl champion with the exception of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar. And even then, you can make the argument that you would take Jalen because he's won a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl MVP. I think he's a top 5 quarterback. As of this very second, a top 5 quarterback, given the fact that his career is so young and that he can do so much. There's so much time for Jalen Hurts to win another. And if he wins another, then what do you do with him? Because at some point, these Super Bowls have to add up, and it's like nobody else is going to touch him except for Patrick.
Jalen Hurts versus the field is what we're doing right now. We're starting in the AFC, obviously. So you're taking C.J. Stroud. Anthony Richardson, I'm assuming this is an easy one.
This is a no, sadly. I wish at this point in Anthony Richardson's career he would have been able to be a yes, but it is a no.
Trevor Lawrence or
No.
Jalen Hurts.
I'm a big Trevor Lawrence hater, so this is a no.
Trevor Lawrence stinks.
Let's go to the
55
Tennessee
million.
Titans, who don't have a quarterback at this point. So let's just we'll keep them off.
Nope. Yep.
We'll keep them off.
Easy no.
AFC North. All right. So, and by the way, to recap, in the East, you would take 2 quarterbacks over him, and you would only take 1 quarterback over him out of the AFC South. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the North. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Let's go.
Jalen Hurts is what a lot of the people that voted Josh Allen MVP want Lamar Jackson to be.
Okay.
I think that's a good take.
Okay.
Just a little bit more, like in the middle, just kind of in control.
He just not very good at much.
Tough one, Joe Burrow. I'm sure you would love to take Jalen Hurts over Joe Burrow.
Yeah, no, this one isn't tough.
I mean, if Tua's better than him, I don't know. You're not going to get a lot.
So this
I have Tua right around the top 10 quarterbacks. Right around Jalen Hurts is.
So the Browns and Deshaun Watson, I have to say, is the Browns quarterback. So obviously that's
Well,
an
if you
easy
gave
one.
yourself Jameis, it might be closer, but it's going to be nose.
So no matter who the quarterback is, obviously taking Jalen Hurts. And the same thing for Pittsburgh, right?
Correct.
Well, let's just say it's Justin Fields.
No, absolutely not. Justin
right.
Fields could turn into Jalen Hurts. Maybe he would if he was in Philly.
So let's go to the West. Bo Nix.
No.
All right. Let's go to, obviously, Patrick Mahomes. You would
Obviously.
take. Yep. The Raiders.
No.
No. All right. And then Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I would take Justin Herbert over
I
him.
would too. I would take
Yeah,
Justin
for sure.
Herbert. Would you, though? Because this is an interesting one for you because you
No,
talked about
I would not.
Okay,
Justin
that's
Herbert
fair.
hasn't won a playoff game, or he's won one, I guess. He hasn't done anything significant in the playoffs. Like I count these playoff wins, I guess, more than everybody else, because if you can win when it matters, that's all that matters in my eyes.
Fair enough, fair enough. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. We're going to pick up with this in the NFC side. But as of now, the AFC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you would take 7 quarterbacks over Jalen Hurts in the AFC alone. There's no way he's a top 10 quarterback at this point.
That's correct.
That's a lot of quarterbacks
Well-
just from one conference.
He is close. He is very close to a top 10 quarterback.
So the NFC is going to get a little interesting.
It's much lighter in the NFC.
Fair enough. All right, we'll pick up with this when we come back. More off the bench when we come back. Jalen Hurts versus the field. Jacob is not the biggest Jalen Hurts fan, and he had a hot take about Jalen Hurts heading into the Super Bowl. And I'm wondering, did his performance in winning a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP kind of sway his opinion on him a little bit? So Jalen Hurts versus the field. We're going QB by QB, team by team, QB by QB in the league to see if it actually matches up to his take that he is not a top 10, top 5 caliber quarterback in the NFL. And so far, out of the AFC, what, Casey, we have 7 quarterbacks that he would take over Jalen Hurts?
That's correct. He's got 7. It is Josh Allen, Tua, C.J. Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Justin Herbert.
I think
Those are
Tua is
the
the only controversial one in that. I agree with all the other names. And I'm not even saying I wouldn't take Tua over. I'm just saying that's the one that I could see being the closest. The other ones are pretty easy. Before we get to the NFC side now, I know you said we had a super chat.
Oh yeah, I have one super chat from our good friend Nate Seltzer, member for 11 months. It's just a happy birthday, Craig. Happy birthday, Craig. Craig is the C-Box GOAT. So there you go, Nate.
And again, happy birthday, Craig.
Happy birthday, Craig. Kenner was the first one on the show.
Yeah, I beat everyone to it. Remember that, Craig. I beat everyone to it. Happy birthday. To the NFC we go. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. Let's go to the division in which, actually Jalen Hurts plays in. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP, or Dak Prescott? If you had to pick between those two QBs, who are you picking? This is where it gets interesting. Dak or Jalen Hurts?
I like Dak. I think Dak's one of the better quarterbacks, in the NFL when it comes to pure passing. 4,500, 4,900 the last 3 years he's been completely healthy. I think he's one of the better pure passers in the entire NFL. I think if he gets healthy, he'll be all right. So, yeah, I would take Dak over Jalen Hurts when it comes to playing quarterback. Now, if you're talking about playing running back, I would probably lean Jalen Hurts.
The Giants don't have a quarterback right now.
Correct.
So we'll move them out. Would you take Jalen Hurts or Jalen Hurts from the Eagles?
I would probably take Jalen Hurts from
Jalen
the
Hurts.
Eagles, because if we're just talking Jalen Hurts, it's not nearly as good.
So here's an interesting one. The last team to get to in the NFC East. The Rookie of the Year. Dominant rookie season. Would you take Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year, or Super Bowl MVP, Jalen Hurts? Who would you pick?
I would take Jaden Daniels because I think it's the same conversation as C.J. Stroud. Because if I wasn't going to take C.J. Stroud, it would be because this year he didn't play well enough. If I wasn't going to take Jaden Daniels, it would be because the sample size wasn't big enough. So I think this year Jaden Daniels was phenomenal. So second NFC quarterback I would take.
So
He's the third best quarterback in this division.
as we sit here right now, Casey, that means at the very least he is the 10th best quarterback in the NFL according to Jacob. At the very least, he has 9 QBs that he would take over Jalen Hurts, and we haven't even got to the NFC North, NFC South, or NFC West.
And I think what's crazy about it is that I kind of agree with most of it so far.
There we go.
The only one I don't agree with is Tua. That's the only one I don't agree with at the moment. But
You would still take Dak over.
I think they're right there neck and neck with each other, to be honest.
That's
with
fair.
you.
And I think I put Dak and Tua, and I would take Dak over Tua, but I still put Dak
would
and
also take
Tua
Dak over Tua.
in that conversation. All right, let's go to the NFC North. Let's start with your guy, Caleb Williams. Would you take Caleb Williams over Jalen Hurts?
Not yet. Same as Drake
Ooh, that was a
May.
close one.
Please don't.
Same as Drake May. Not yet. I think both those guys are on a trajectory to get there. But yeah, can't say so yet with the sample size for Caleb or Drake.
All right, what about Jared Goff with the Lions? Would you take Jared Goff over Super Bowl MVP Jalen Hurts?
I would take Jared Goff over Jalen Hurts when it comes to playing quarterback. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, same as Jalen Hurts. Obviously, he hasn't gotten over the top, but I think he's had a lot more sustained success when playing quarterback than Jalen Hurts has. So yeah, I would also take Jared Goff.
Jordan Love and the Packers. Would you take Jordan Love over Jalen Hurts?
This is the one a lot of people in the chat were expecting me to say yes. I'm going to say no. I'm going to have Jordan Love right behind Jalen Hurts, but the sample size just not quite big enough. He had a great second half of the year 2 years ago. This year, really up and down. So I'm not going to say that Jordan Love's better yet. I do really like Jordan Love. Definitely buying a lot of Jordan Love stock, but not taking him above Hurts right now.
And then Vikings don't technically
wouldn't take Darnold if
have
it
a
was
quarterback, but you wouldn't. So okay, I was going to put Sam Darnold off to the side, so you would not take Sam Darnold. So we'll associate Sam Darnold with the Vikings at this point.
Wouldn't take JJ either if that was
that matters.
Yeah.
Okay. To the NFC South we go. The Atlanta Falcons and Kirk Cousins.
No, definitely not Kirk, but Michael Penix would fall into that Caleb Drake May category.
Okay, I was like, oh.
No, not yet. But I'm very high on this last quarterback class.
All right, what about your guy over with the Carolina Panthers?
No Bryce Young. Turned it on a little bit at the end, started to look like a number 1 pick. But yeah, again, definitely not yet.
What about Shake and Bake, Baker Mayfield with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
I wish, but can't in good conscience. So that's a no as well.
Baker was really good this year.
He was really good this year.
He's been really good for 2 straight years.
It's true.
And I'm not advocating that you should.
No, he is.
That's one of those interesting ones. That Baker or Tua, who are you taking?
I'd take Baker over Tua.
But you would not.
I would take Tua
so
over
hold on,
Hurts.
you would
Yeah,
take
that
Tua.
hurts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, so I guess
come
I'll
on.
take Baker over. I guess I'll take Baker over Hurts.
Oh, no.
I'll take Baker over Hurts too then. Because I would take
What are we
Baker over Tua.
doing? What
Yeah.
are we doing
I didn't
here?
mean to set you up like
I would
that.
take Baker over Tua.
The man won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, with the best O-line in the league, second best defense in the league, top 2 receiving duo, and best running back in the league.
I feel like I could be wrong on this. I feel like the Cowboys have had like similar roster builds, and they've failed consistently.
I don't
with
necessarily
that.
agree with that.
I think Hurts is the number 1 quarterback in the NFC.
In the NFC,
Yeah. And then right behind him is an old aging Stafford and Prescott.
I do like Stafford, but I would have Stafford just because of age
Yeah.
below.
So with that, Stafford in the West. So you just said it. So you would
Just
not
because
take,
of age,
Okay.
I would go below.
Obviously, you look at why am I drawing a blank? The Cardinals.
Murray.
Murray, Kyler Murray.
No. Now I
Really?
think Kyler Murray looks similar to Jalen Hurts if Jalen Hurts isn't in Philly.
Fair enough. And then what about Geno?
No. Casey?
No. What about Brock Purdy?
Definitely not.
A guy you could put in the same.
Definitely not.
Everything
well,
that
I
people say
think
about
now I
Brock
think he'd be
Purdy.
a Super Bowl champion if he was the Eagles quarterback.
But he would not have been Super Bowl MVP. So,
Probably
I
not.
mean,
Probably not.
There. All right. So you would not take anyone out of the West. You took a quarterback out of every division except the NFC West. And you didn't take any more than 2 quarterbacks out of any division. You did take 2 quarterbacks out of the AFC East, North, and West, and then the NFC East, but only 1 out of the South, of course. And then you took Jared Goff. You did take Jared Goff. So what was the final total, Casey? So according to Jacob's tally here, he says he's not a top 10 quarterback, and I think according to this, he's not, according to Jacob.
Jacob has him at the 12th best quarterback in the league.
I said 11-12 without ranking it.
Yeah, which is about what he said.
And I would hear a very much coin flip argument for Dak to, a lot of those guys.
Baker
on that
Mayfield.
list. Yeah, Baker. A lot of those guys on that list.
If you believe that he's the best quarterback in the NFC, that would put him at 8, I believe, on this list. So that's.
I think there's a valid argument for Jalen Hurts to be a top 10 quarterback. I think it's an argument that should be had. I think the discussion of him being top 5 or top 3, or a lot of people saying 2, I think that's just insane.
I would still take him, as much as I love Jaden Daniels after 1 year. I would take Hurts over Daniels and Dak. I would still take him over Tua, although I'm very close to that with where you're at there. I still think I would take him over Baker. But, man, Baker's the most – I think he's
if
the most
Baker does it
interesting.
again with another different offensive coordinator.
Yes. He's had a lot stacked up against him, too. But he put up – like, if you go look at his numbers, he threw for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. I don't know if you saw that graphic, but, like, only 10 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL have thrown for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. And there was only 8 quarterbacks doing that heading into this season. There's now 10. Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield are the only 2 QBs this year to throw for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns. Like, that is an unbelievable thing that Baker did, but no one even closely looks at what he did and compares it to what Joe Burrow did. And I'm not advocating that they should. I'm just saying I think Baker, there's a lot of that inconsistencies throughout the start that are preventing us from really latching on to what we're seeing, because that's a hell of a run. I mean, 4,500 yards is just insane. So either way. All right, off the bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. So if I picked him over those 3, that'd put him a top 10. I still look at him as being better, though. I'm like, I understand why you're like the top
like
4 and then him, but yeah.
I mean, if you were redraft, if next year was the last year of the NFL and we're doing a league-wide redraft of everybody, out of all the quarterbacks taken, Jalen Hurts
would not be a top 10 pick.
Yes, he would.
No, he
yes,
wouldn't.
He absolutely is taken above Tua. He's absolutely taken above Baker Mayfield, and he's absolutely taken above Jared Goff. I don't know about the rest of them, but those 3, 100%.
He would be drafted above Tua because of the injuries. If you redrafted the 2020 draft class, Jalen Hurts would be the 4th quarterback taken.
Remind me, 2020.
Joe Burrow, Herbert, Love, and then they would take Hurts in the 2020 draft class.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Knowing what we knew then.
Knowing what we know now.
Oh, knowing what we know now?
I think if you redrafted the league, he'd be the 4th quarterback taken out of his draft class.
Oh, I would take him over Love. I couldn't pick Love over him. So that I'll add Love to that. I'm still not, but you've been high on Love. We both stayed the same.
Yeah,
I wasn't high on Love coming in. You were.
I think projections help Love a lot more than looking back. His sample, I don't have him above Hurts right now because the sample size isn't big
These
enough.
races aren't started from the same block.
Exactly.
Starting block, if you will. But all right, cool. Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. I know the ticker says we have the Reds coming up, but I want to can we go to the NFL?
We can.
Mock draft. We'll stay with the NFL. Which ESPN personality put out the mock draft?
Field Yates.
Field Yates, yes. Field Yates released the latest mock draft today. We'll take a look at who he has going in the top 5. We'll see what's going on with the AFC North. We'll see who he has the Bengals taking at number 17. We'll get to all of that when we come back. More off the bench when we return. They said you look like Nick Wright or your takes are sounding like Nick Wright.
I think both.
I think their claim is the longer the hair grows, the more I'm going to start morphing into Nick Wright with my takes. So they're asking me to cut my hair so this nonsense stops. Their words, not mine. 'Cause I don't think it's nonsense.
I thought you've always had long hair, but I saw a clip
No.
from us at the Memorial last year, and I'm like, oh, that's short hair Jake.
Yeah, no, this is the first period of my life I've had long hair.
I just want no beard, Jake, is what I want.
You're going to get it. I have a date.
Okay, good.
So you're going to get it.
With the long hair?
That's the plan to start.
So when you say
Then we'll see what happens.
When you say you have a date, like a date or
No, I have
like
a date
on the
circled.
calendar?
In the
I have a
calendar.
date in the
Okay.
calendar for no more beard.
Gotcha.
And is it going to be like we won't know it, you're just going to walk in one day and
Well,
whoa.
yeah, that's the plan, but I might find a way to, before I want to shave my beard, to bet my beard
Fair enough.
on something and then lose. and then I was going to shave it anyway.
Is this Bengals related?
People forget how close I was
Very
to being
close.
head
Very
bald.
The 7 straight wins. They didn't
Yeah.
they won 5 straight.
They won. It was if they had beaten the Steelers, they would have done what they needed to do.
I didn't realize it was that.
Yeah.
I remember we talked about that.
Yeah.
I forgot it was that.
So
close.
I was close to being
glad it
a
didn't.
naked mole rat sitting here in the studio, just bald head, no eyebrows, no beard, no eyelashes, just sitting here.
I think the clips would take off more just because people would scroll through and stop.
Whoa!
Like, what the hell?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Oh man. Field Yates for ESPN put out their latest mock draft, and yes, it's full steam ahead mock draft season. And look, these are going to change throughout, but we'll take a look at the top 5 picks according to Field Yates in his latest mock draft. Him and Mel Kiper will every other week release their latest and what they have. And so we'll take a look at the top 5. We'll take a look at the AFC North, and then any other picks that catch your attention, throw them out there. But the Tennessee Titans at number 1 are kind of an interesting one.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders last week when he was doing his media tour, he said he had, he was asked about the teams that he would not want his son to go play for, but said, hey, he's going to go and talk with every team and hear their plan for how they would use him. He said he spoke with quite a few teams except the Tennessee Titans. Is that weird that he did not speak with the Tennessee Titans? Why would you not speak with the Tennessee Titans if you are Deion Sanders?
They've either made it clear that they're not going to take a quarterback, or that they're going to take Cam Ward, or he has no reservations about Shooter going to Tennessee. I think would be the 3 possible points. If he was all gung-ho on Brian Callahan and the Titans, maybe Deion's like, I don't need to meet with him.
Yep.
I'll spend my time meeting with the Browns and the Giants who have a quarterback on the hot seat. And these other teams, the Raiders, obviously, before they hired Pete Carroll. I think a lot of the other teams that Shador could possibly go to have a lot more question marks than Tennessee. I'm not saying Tennessee's a ready-made roster or anything like that, but you know who their coach is going to be. They just hired a new general manager who's starting out a new contract. There's not a lot of questions about where they're going to try to go. I think there's questions trajectory-wise with a lot of the other franchises that could be looking to take Shooter Sanders, and maybe that's why he hasn't talked to them. But if Tennessee made it clear with the number 1 overall pick that they prefer Cam Ward, no incentive to talk to him there. And if they've made it clear that they're going to take either Travis or Abdul Carter, no reason to talk there either. So I don't think it necessarily rules anything out.
So Tennessee Titans have the number 1 overall pick. And a while back, they'd come out and said they were not going to let a generational talent slip through their fingers. I think we can all agree quarterbacks, no quarterback here is a generational talent. I think you're probably talking about Travis Hunter, and that's who Field Yates has, the Tennessee Titans taking number 1 overall. Travis Hunter going number 1. Do you like that pick? If the Titans go Travis Hunter number 1 overall, is that a safe pick?
Safe pick? Absolutely not. Maybe one of the riskiest picks. The right pick? Absolutely. I think I've flip-flopped on this since earlier in draft season. I think Travis Hunter has to play both ways. You have to at least try. You have to see if it can work, because if Shohei came over from Japan and you said he's a better pitcher than he is as a hitter, we're going to let him pitch, you would never know that you have Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah.
So you got to try it. You have 4 years of a rookie contract to see if it works. If it doesn't work in the first 2 years, then you extend him as a corner. And if it does work, then you're probably paying him close to $60 million to play both ways. So I think it's an absolute win for Travis. I don't know why he would try to do anything else. And if it works both ways, then he's absolutely the number 1 overall player in this class. If it doesn't work both ways, it's probably not the greatest pick. It's probably one of the worst picks. But he's going to be a fine corner, I think, in this league, and you'll be able to justify it. But if you take him 1, you absolutely have to try to play him both ways. And if you're going to try to play him both ways, then you justify taking him 1.
And I don't think he would be like a number 1 wide receiver was never in his future.
No.
And I don't even think a number 2 wide receiver would be in his future. I think he'd be a gadget guy, and I think he would be involved in the offense. I don't know. I don't know what a comparison would be. I could see maybe like a Xavier Worthy type, but doesn't get as many targets. Like it's like they could use him on different stuff, use him on different types of plays. I don't think he'd be like a full-time wide receiver. I think you'd see him like in the red zone. I think you'd see him whenever you needed a big play.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, but with the number 1 overall pick is the value that you get production from him on both sides of the ball. But the production you get from him on both sides of the ball, what's the value there? Like, what does he have to be? If you're going to take a cornerback number 1 overall, he has to be a top 5 corner. If you're going to take you disagree?
No.
I'm sorry. I think
I'm saying
shaking your
even
head.
if you knew if you knew for sure he was going to be a top 5 corner, you probably wouldn't take him number 1.
Yeah.
Like
So,
you still don't think that's enough value.
and then if you're a wide receiver, I mean,
Certainly not the best wide receiver in this class. You can at least argue that he's the best corner.
so there's at least that. Like, he has to be the top 5 in something. And that's the big hang up there. But again, if you're not, they don't want to force the quarterback if you're the Titans. So
If they don't think he can play both ways, you cannot take him number 1. You cannot take him number 1 to play corner. You cannot take him number 1 to play wide receiver. If you're going to take him in the top, really, I think 3 or 4 picks, you have to play him both ways, or at least try. I'm not saying you force it if it doesn't work, but you have to let him try.
I also don't like drafting a guy, though, that, like, I don't see a long-term future with his drafted team because, like, if he does do what you say, and I agree, I think he has to play both ways to make it worth the number 1 overall pick. If that works, if he's successful, yeah, you'll get 5 years, but you'll have to trade him because there's no way he's going to be worth more than any player in the league if he outside of quarterbacks. If he's successful at both positions, I mean that contract would be unprecedented.
Yeah,
And that was the whole
No
thing.
one's going to pay. No one's going to want to pay that. Assuming, especially not the Tennessee Titans or whatever dumpster he's going to. Maybe the Patriots would. I don't know.
I mean, how does that? Obviously, we don't know. It's never been done before. How does that contract compare to
I don't
a
know.
quarterback? Quarterbacks get 55, 60. Top wide receivers get 30. Top corners get 20. Is he getting a $50 million contract?
That's what I'm saying. I think he does. If he's good at both, I think you have to, and I think you get guaranteed at both. And I think that's a contract I would not want to deal with if I was a franchise, especially given the fact that we don't really even know how good his talent translates to the NFL. We don't in this draft class he's a fine cornerback, but compared to the other NFL corners, what is he, right? And compared to the other NFL wide receivers, what is he? We don't know. It's just so much questioning a guy. No disrespect, I think he was great in college, fantastic. There's so many question marks revolving him heading into the NFL that I would be scared to take him.
I have him as corner 2 and wide receiver 4, just for reference on my position rankings, and you cannot justify taking someone who's not the best to their position at number 1 overall. You can't justify taking someone who's not the best to their position in the top 5, realistically, unless, quarterback, we see it a lot, or if it's an elite class with edge rushers or tackles or something like that. But when have we ever seen 2 corners go in the top 5? And I mean, we're not talking about Will Johnson going that high, and he's a better corner than Travis Hunter in my mind. So I think if you're talking about him this high, it has to be to play both ways.
But you said you like the pick, though.
I do, because if he plays both ways,
okay,
it can be one of the greatest picks of all time to have this kind of athlete fall into your lap. So
that would be generational,
right.
Just like the way we talk about Shohei, as you mentioned.
I'm willing to take the risk on it not working, which is honestly the more likely outcome.
And to Elliot's point, that's what led to the issues with Deebo Samuel, too. Deebo Samuel was being used like a running back, but as a wide receiver, but they only wanted to pay him like a wide receiver. And he's like, well, then stop using me in the run game. Stop, and it was like trying to classify, trying to dictate how you're going to use me. You're going to pay me how you use me then, if that's the case. Like, you're not just going to call me a wide receiver or, call me a running back or a wide receiver and then pay me for only one of those positions. If you're going to use me for 2 positions, pay me for both positions. That's what led to the holdout and the ultimate sit out for an entire year from Le'Veon Bell back in the day with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it could lead to one of those situations as well. But this one's more distinct. This is literally 2 different positions on 2 different sides of the ball, to where the other argument was, well, the way that you're used in the offense, Deebo and Le'Veon Bell back in the day. The Cleveland Browns have the number 2 pick. This is one of the more interesting picks just because no clue what the hell they're going to do. Abdul Carter going number 2. As a Browns fan, if they take Abdul Carter number 2, I'm more than fine with it. It's either Myles Garrett's replacement or they smooth things over with Myles Garrett, and now you get a dominant pass rusher to play opposite side of him. I think it's a win-win there. I still want them to go quarterback because you're never going to be promised to be drafted this high again, but then you can make the joke and say, well, don't worry. They'll be right back there again next year. Yeah. But, Cleveland going Abdul Carter, according to Field Yates.
I don't like the quarterback class enough if I was Cleveland to bet my entire next 5 years on. That's not what I would do personally. I would go Carter and roll with it. Roll with the punches, be bad next season, and try to get maybe a generational quarterback next year. And we'll just keep trying to get it until hopefully Arch Manning lands in your lap. That's what I would do. But I just don't see it. I don't see Shedeur changing the Cleveland Browns. I don't see that. I think Cam Ward is good. I think Cam Ward's very, very good, but you're not going to take him that high. So what would you be drafting with the number 2 pick if you're not confident in, those quarterbacks as much as you should be? I wouldn't touch anything. I would even consider trading the pick.
Yeah, that's the route. That's the route I'd go if I was Tennessee. If I'm calling everyone, if I don't want one of these quarterbacks, and seeing who does. And I'm not talking about a Bryce Young Bears type trade. I'm talking about, a second round pick. to move back in the top 5. Just get a little bit more draft capital. I don't think you're going to move like crazy, go get a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, but if the Titans or the Browns can move down to 6 with the Raiders want to make sure they get Shedeur. Browns move down 4 spots for 2 mid-round picks. I think that's a great spot to be in if you're Cleveland, because we've talked a lot on this show about how bad Cleveland's in a spot with draft capital-wise. And if you can just add a couple picks there in the mid-rounds, that is a wonderful spot to be. Get younger, get cheaper, get more athletic. The only reason I think they should take a quarterback, and it's the exact opposite of where I normally stand with teams in the Browns situation, I always say you should build around it and then hope you get lucky and you have a bad year and you get a quarterback that's really good. But in Cleveland's situation, you don't have the ability in the next 2 or 3 years that the Deshaun Watson contract's still on the books to go out and sign who you want in free agency or really even supplement that position at all. So the best chance you have is to hit on a pick in the draft, and you are picking second. You're going to have a pick of one of these 2 quarterbacks that's talked about doing or going that high, and I think you take one because it's the best, cheapest chance you have to get a good quarterback in there and mitigate this Deshaun Watson damage as much as possible. Now, if it doesn't work, you're in the same spot as you're in anyway in 3 years with Deshaun's contract. So it's your chance to get someone who can maybe turn this around a little quicker. That's the only reason I would lean quarterback for Cleveland, just because they're already so constrained with that deal.
I wouldn't say, but my argument is, like, if they're desperate right now, and if you draft a quarterback here, you're desperate. You're playing the desperate hand. I don't know how you think that's going to work out, because as you just said, financially, you're not going to be able to help the kid. You're not going to be able to help your quarterback. You're not going to be able to pay large contracts. Your wide receiving room is okay. It's not the worst wide receiving room in football, but like, you need help. You're going to need a new running back. You're going to need a new. I don't know what's going to happen with Njoku. You're going to need an overhaul of that roster, and you're going to have limited funds to help him out. That's the part I don't get. And if you're Cleveland, I understand 100% wanting a quarterback, because the quarterback is the number one position you root for on a team. Whether or not you want to agree to that, that's fine. It's just the truth. If you have a really good quarterback, it's really fun to cheer for your team. And the Browns would be betting that this season that they can be bad enough to get one next year. And that's the play I would have. I would trade back. If you want to take a quarterback, do it that way. Trade back and maybe take Ward later on in the first round, a couple picks back. I'd get as much value.
Will Howard in the 3rd.
Yeah, I wouldn't draft a quarterback. Maybe a Will Howard in the 3rd. I wouldn't draft
like Jackson Dart at 34. I think you should be circling that second pick in the 2nd round for a quarterback potential.
They have 5 picks in the top 4 because they got that extra 3rd from the Amari Cooper trade, which is still wild that they got that additional 3rd. So they have 2 thirds, a 1st and a 2nd, and they can be creative, and they can maybe create an extra pick in the top 4 if they trade back. So they could end up possibly with 6 picks in the top 4 with that. Did you know the Niners have 7 picks in the top 4?
No.
This upcoming season? That is wild. I was listening to ESPN Radio on the way in today. Everyone's talking about how much in trouble the Niners are, and they're like, no, they draft really well, and they have 7 picks in the top 4 rounds this year. That's a team to keep an eye out there. Yeah, Cleveland, they have options. Bottom line is they're going to roll over contracts. They'll be able to open some stuff up. They're not trading Myles Garrett. I thought it was 36 against the cap. If they trade him, it's 60.
Yeah.
They're not trading.
They would split it.
Like, defer it, I guess, over the 2 years, but, like, they're not trading him. They're not.
You quite literally can't financially.
Financially.
You can't.
Because then Ward's going to want out,
right.
And then you trade him, and now you're at that 60, and that's just before you get to the already accrued dead cap numbers before. So and that's the thing too. We're like, well, he'll sit out, and that's fine considering the circumstance. If he sits out, that still provides the Browns flexibility to keep that roster intact. Than if they trade him. If they trade him, they have no chance of keeping stuff intact. If they keep him on the roster, even if he doesn't play, it's a weird thing. But yes, there you go. The Giants picking number 3, they would go Cam Ward, according to Field Yates.
Dream scenario for them. Dable needs a quarterback real bad to save his job. The only way he's their coach next year, not this upcoming season, but the season after, is if they get a young quarterback and he plays relatively well. What he did with Daniel Jones was praised league-wide, and then we saw after that one playoff win how bad he looked, and they cut a $160 million quarterback. You know how bad you have to be to get cut midseason as a $160 million quarterback? You got to be real bad. So I think this Giants front office certainly needs a change. If you're a Giants fan, I mean, we talk about it here in Cincinnati a lot. We have Duke Tobin going into his 26th draft in a row, and he hasn't exactly had the greatest track record. If you're a Giants fan this year, and they kind of move through front office personnel much more regularly, obviously, than we do, but really more regularly than almost anyone in the league, how do you let Joe Schoen go through another offseason? after letting Saquon Barkley leave, after botching that draft
can't.
as much as you can. Well, they are.
I know.
I don't know how, as a fan, you swallow that and let him go through another offseason. But, I mean, maybe picking third will be enough to help him out and, have some pieces fall in their lap. But, I mean, I think we've already all forgotten Drew Lock screwed him out of the number 1 pick. They could have very easily been the number 1 pick. And we would have been talking about one of these quarterbacks going to New York, which I think they have a pretty decent core there with Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy and Andrew Thomas, one of the best left tackles in football, and Brian Burns on defense. So if they could have got a quarterback at 1, that would have been great. If Cam Ward falls to him at 3, I think they could be sneaky competitive next year. I'm not talking about a Super Bowl, but fighting for a wild card spot in the NFC.
Yeah.
So I could see them doing what the Falcons did last year and create noise in the top 10.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford's being linked to the Giants a lot. The Rams are, obviously they floated Cooper Kupp out there. If I could see the Giants taking Cam Ward at 3 and trading for Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has maybe 2 years left, and then they can go the Michael Penix Jr. route or whatever, if you will. They have the cap
for these
space.
quarterbacks.
They have the cap space to do it. And if you're going to take a Cam Ward, there's the big concern about Cam Ward and Shador is, well, they're the best quarterbacks in this draft, but they're not really being, linked to, the Jaden Daniels or the C.J. Stroud type that have elevated teams the last couple of years. So if the Giants get Cam Ward at 3, I would still expect them to possibly go after a Matthew Stafford if they can work that out when it's all said and done. The Patriots have the number 4 pick. Field Yates has the Patriots in his mock draft that he put out earlier today, taking Will Campbell, the offensive tackle out of LSU.
Love him, can play tackle and guard, gives them a lot of versatility in New England where they don't really have anything. I think a lot of people probably turn their nose up at taking a lineman when you had the worst receiving core in football last year, but when you have a guy like Drake May back there, you got to protect him. So you absolutely have to protect him. You can get a wide receiver a different way. That's where T. Higgins is going if he hits the open market. They have $120 million in cap space. They'd pay him as much as they want to be their number 1 wide receiver. I think they're going to go that route for the weapons and take Will Campbell here.
And then number 5, the Jaguars taking Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, looking to add a pass rusher on the defensive side of the ball, of course. I know I said only top 5, but Shador dropping to number 6 to the Raiders. In this scenario, the Raiders wouldn't have to trade up to get him.
That feels to me like that would be a force, right? If Shador falls all the way to 6, that would have been some behind-the-scenes strings pulled. I don't see any way that he falls down there. Not getting 2 quarterbacks in the top 5 would shock me. Even though I don't think either are worthy of that slot, it would shock me if neither of them go there. So if Shador ends up on a Raider, they're either moving up to get him or he's forcing his way down there.
The pick in the top 10 I found weird. Tat McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona, going number 9 to the Saints.
Yeah, that wide receiver certainly seems like an interesting pick there.
They have too many needs.
Chris
to go wide
Olave
receiver.
and Rashid Shaheed, who have both been doing a great job. They have a lot of needs for sure. Are they running it back with Derek Carr? Is that the plan? Are they going to try to move on from him? I don't really know. I think Kellen Moore is in line to become the next head coach of the New Orleans Saints. So a lot of questions about that organization going in, and I don't think a wide receiver is what they should do there.
And if Kellen Moore is your head coach and running that offense, it's probably Derek Carr.
Yeah.
And I could see them going wide receiver to put with Chris Olave and company and kind of go from there. So maybe I guess it makes more sense the more you talk it out, but I just feel like they're in a dumpster fire situation as well. Continuing to go down, Niners at number 11, taking Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State, the Buckeye, going at number 11. Let's see, continuing to scroll through here just to see if any other AFC North teams pop up. And then, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals at number 17. You've been big on James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee, of course. Field Yates has him dropping to 19 and Tampa Bay taking him there because he has your Bengals taking Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, at 17. Elliott, some defensive help for your Cincinnati Bengals.
They need it. They need it. I mean, there's no other way around it. So, I mean, if that's the route they go with, I'm going to support them. Our boy Al needs to do his thing, and we'll see if we can get the job done this year. But it starts at the draft. Jacob yesterday made a very good point. It's like if the Eagles have an entire roster made of draft picks, successful draft picks, like that's how you be successful in this league. The Bengals aren't close to it. I wonder what the Bengals number of starters.
Yeah.
I wonder what that is.
Yeah, it's probably honestly higher than it should be.
I would imagine so, but it's like it's tough. I think that's what you have to do, assuming, I mean, our boy T, if T comes back, it makes it very easy. So
Correct. And that's the biggest thing, is you want to make draft night as easy as possible. Go in with as little amount of needs as possible.
You think that decision will be made by then?
I think that decision will be made the next week or so. It has to be. It has to be made before free agency starts. If he hits the open market, you're not giving yourself a real shot.
I agree.
What do you think, Case, about the Walter Nolan possibility?
I like Walter Nolan. There's some picks there. I'm just looking ahead that I would also be comfortable with, like James Pierce Jr. But Walter Nolan's a good solid pick. Reminds me of maybe like a souped up Chris Jenkins. He's got a really, really high motor. Goes from sideline to sideline as a defensive tackle. You really love to see that in your D line. You know he's going to get after it. And he's got really, really good hands, good footwork, and can cause a lot of disruption. So I like the pick a lot there at 17. Couldn't really go wrong there if you're looking at the D line with those options available to you there at 17.
Ashton Jeanty dropping to number 20 to the Denver Broncos. I thought that was interesting because for a minute I thought we were really, not you, I knew you weren't, but people really everyone convincing themselves that, including me at one point, I thought he could go pretty high. I think if he goes any higher than 20, it's the Dallas Cowboys going
That's
that
where
route.
That's where I'm sitting.
But the Denver Broncos have always been the aggressive team when it comes to running backs throughout their history, of course. Ashton Jeanty with Denver, I kind of like. Bo Nix handing it off to Ashton Jeanty, that defense of the Broncos, a very solid offense right there. I think they need to get another wide receiver, too, to help with that pass game, to help Bo Nix take that next step. I kind of like Ashton Jeanty to Denver. I just don't know, is that the pick you make right there with number 20 in the first round?
I think it's a pretty good pick for a team like Denver. I think they're doing a good job out there. At that point, all the receivers are gone in this instance of a mock draft, and I just don't think I would go, I take that back. Emeka Egbuka's still on the board in this mock draft. So, yeah, I would not go Ashton Jeanty. I would take one of the receivers there, one of those more inside guys with Cortland Sutton. I think that'd be a great job by the Broncos front office. But they're gonna have so much money they don't know what to do with themselves. I mean, they built a playoff team in an offseason with a rookie quarterback when they had $60 million against the cap for another team's playoff starting quarterback. So they're gonna go silly this offseason. I think they're gonna do a really good job. This is probably the worst Denver Broncos team we're gonna see for a while, which is pretty scary when they're already at 10 wins and in the wild card. I think the biggest question is just does Bo Nix really take any steps forward?
Yeah.
Did we see what we've seen or have we seen the best of Bo Nix already? I think that's always a concern with a guy who started for as long as he did in college and then has a good rookie year, but I don't know.
Broncos had 3 running backs start at different points during the season last year. Not even because of injury. It was just because that's what they wanted to do. I think GT going there would be scary. It would be very scary for me, who doesn't believe in the Denver Broncos or Bo Nix.
And the way to, again, assuming the Chiefs improve their offense and become explosive again, best way to neutralize how do you go up against an explosive Justin Herbert offense or an explosive Chiefs offense? You run the clock, you keep that offense off the field. If you have an explosive run game like that, if you're Denver, it kind of checks off a lot of boxes too. It elevates your offense, but also gives you a weapon to keep the opposing offense off the field when you got to play Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes twice a year. Pittsburgh Steelers are at number 21. And this pick, I'm curious if this surprises you. Not that they go this position, because if this guy is available at 21, it would not surprise me based on what we've heard about him shooting up the draft boards. Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. For one, do you like that pick? And two, there's no way Jackson Dart's dropping to number 21, right?
Yeah, I'm missing something. This has to be some kind of big prank by the NFL because Jackson Dart stinks. I mean, Jackson Dart.
You don't like Jackson
Not
Dart.
at all.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think Jackson Dart's an NFL quarterback whatsoever. I think
Jackson
he's
Fart.
Jackson Fart's right. He's a locker room cancer. He's been hated by everyone everywhere he's been, and I just don't think that's a guy who really. I mean, I don't think he has much talent. I mean, he threw for a ton of yards and empty stats in Lane Kiffin's offense in the SEC. They lost to unranked teams. Jackson Dart does not move me, but this quarterback class sucks, so who knows?
Jackson Dart, Philadelphia Eagle. Jackson Dart better than Jalen Hurts?
No. I would take Jalen Hurts over Jackson Dart.
Definitely fits the mold. Toxic personality would fit right in Philadelphia.
That's true.
So I thought, by the way, the Texans, I know no one really cares about the Texans, but Emeka Egbuka on the board, and they're taking the Texans, the wide receiver out of Missouri, and Luther Burden III. Is Luther Burton the third? Would you take him over Emeka Egbuka if you're the Texans,
He's
knowing what you've had with C.J. Stroud and Egbuka in the past?
He's one of the most polarizing players in the entire draft, Luther Burton is. He had 375 yards as a freshman, 6 touchdowns, which was an absolutely insane year in terms of the 6 touchdowns and production at Missouri as a freshman. Turned around, had almost 1,300 yards as a sophomore, 9 touchdowns, and then this year went all the way back down to 600 yards. So the production really dropped off. Missouri obviously wasn't as good this year as they were last year, so that could obviously be part of it. He lost Theo East early in the year, so he didn't have a lot of that production either next to him, so obviously a lot of the defense's eyes returned to him. I'm not nearly as high on him as a lot of other people. I think Emeka is a much better receiver than Luther Burton is. You see the sustained production. He's the number 1 receiver receptions-wise in Ohio State history, and that's a pretty long, illustrious list of Ohio State receivers. So I think Emeka's a great receiver, especially out of the slot. He's going to dominate in the NFL, and I would absolutely have him above Luther Burton, and I would have Emeka in the top 20.
Emeka Egbuka going number 29 to the Washington Commanders. You have to think T is going to be
That'd
someone
be a
they
dream come
probably
true.
prioritize. Do you take T? If you get T, do you still take Emeka here?
Oh, I would absolutely consider taking both or adding 2 receivers because I'm not 100% convinced Terry McLaurin's going to be back. He has some big cap hits. I think if they go a different route with receiver, they could look to move him. So
How old is he?
he's getting up there. I think he's over 30.
Is he really?
Or
He's
at
been
least
here that
close.
long?
Yeah, he's been in the league for a while.
29.
29. So maybe 30 by kickoff. But yeah, he's been a great receiver in Washington, a phenomenal receiver, one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated receivers in the NFL during his career. But I just think with Jaden Daniels' rookie contract, now is not a terrible time to reset on some of those older guys, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, if you can find good partners for those aging guys on big-time contracts. I'm not saying you rebuild, because certainly you were in the NFC Championship game this year. You're ready to win now. So I'm not saying you're running to the phones to move on from those guys, but if a T. Higgins is on the market, if an Emeka Egbuka is on the draft board, maybe you take both of those guys and move on from Terry and get younger and faster.
And that would be, because, again, Buckeye wide receiver did pretty well the first time.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was that old. I keep feeling like Terry McLaurin has just been in the league for a couple of years, but he's been in for a minute. And then last here, the Chiefs, no surprise, going offensive line with their first-round draft pick, taking Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State.
Yeah, of course. The Chiefs just, sit there at 31, and the most versatile lineman in the entire draft falls to him. Perfect playoff performer at tackle after starting 3 years at guard. So, yeah, they'll just be able to play him whenever injury pops up. Perfect Chiefs draft pick.
Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia to Baltimore. You got to find somebody to hopefully keep, whether it's T or whether it's Jamar or whoever in front. So, going safety with their first-round pick.
Kyle Hamilton again, a unanimous top 10 player in the class, falls down to the mid-teens, early 20s, and the Ravens scoop him up and have an all-pro defense for cheap. So, yeah, wouldn't shock me at all.
Jihad Campbell, linebacker of Alabama, falling all the way to the Eagles in the last one here.
The only reason he's available at 32 is because of the position he plays, and people don't value off-ball linebacker. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just telling you what it is. Jihad Campbell is one of the best overall players in this draft class when you talk about the position he plays. He's an incredible off-ball linebacker, flies around the field. You just don't take an off-ball linebacker that high. So I think he will be a first-round pick. I think he's distantly the best off-ball linebacker if you count Jalen Walker as an edge. The Eagles would be very lucky. Would fit their mold. Jalen Carter at 9, Nakobe Dean in the second round, Cooper DeJean at 40. They get the top inside linebacker at 32, and they probably let Zach Bond walk and get cheaper and maybe even better on defense, losing an All-Pro. So
that's what they said too. That Zach Bond scheduled to be a free agent and obviously earn a huge pay raise, something that the Eagles won't need to force with him.
Yeah.
This seems like the way to go.
All the Eagles pending free agents that I wanted the Bengals to target had really, really great Super Bowls that probably bumped them up about $5 or $10 million.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We went long on that one, but again, Field Yates, they just put out ESPN's latest mock draft, and those will be obviously a big talking point the rest of the way. Always curious to see how many of these change. Jackson Dart, though, not high. So no Will Howard, no matter how much we've heard Will Howard shooting up these draft boards from his speed to his size to what we saw in the playoff. Didn't crack. At some point, do you think he starts cracking first-round mock drafts?
I don't think there should be a third quarterback in these first-round mocks. I think it's going to be Shadur and Cam, and I think that's probably going to be it. If you're taking a third quarterback in this top 32 picks, I think you're talking yourself into something that's not there.
Yeah.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wingham and Dayton. We'll step away for a few moments. Pitchers and catchers reported for the Reds yesterday. We'll talk a little Reds. Got some Bearcats coming up for you around the corner as well, as they're in action tonight. College hoops. We'll get to all of that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, Elliot, your top 10 college football prospects for
Yeah, Johnny Manziel, Tim Tebow. That's all I got. But Reds. It's time to talk about the Reds.
The
Because
local ball club.
44 days until opening day. 44 days until opening day.
Oh, wow.
That's a long time still. I
It
keep
is
thinking
still
we're
a long
close,
time.
but it's like when you say it like that, it's like that's still a minute. That's still a while.
And we do have breaking news with the Reds.
Ooh.
Who's hurt?
The Reds today signed Josh Staumont to a minor league contract with an invitation to Major League camp.
That's huge because I heard the Dodgers were throwing big money at him, and the Reds must have outbid the Dodgers to get him. So that's
Yeah.
huge.
Congrats on your World Series championships.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Every social media joke that comes with it, we're winning it all, baby. We're winning it all. But
And
Reds,
it's Graham Ashcraft's birthday.
Happy birthday.
big day
the
for old
Bulldogs,
Graham.
To our new reliever. Maybe. Happy birthday. It was fun seeing all the guys come in yesterday. You get to see all the pictures. You get to see Burnsy and Matt McClain and Ludolo. You get to see all your boys come back to camp. It's like the first day of not even school. First day of summer camp, I guess.
Orientation.
First day
It's
of
like orientation.
You want to say
You
orientation?
show up to get your schedule. I don't know how
Yeah.
you guys did it, but there was a date where you got to go and you got to go pick up your schedules. It's your first time seeing your friends after a summer break.
Yeah.
And, you get to go, see the classrooms you're going to be in, all that fun stuff. Yeah, this is orientation for these players.
Yeah, good for them. I'm excited. I'm very excited about the Reds this year. And as long, God willing, they stay healthy this spring, we're going to be in for a good season. Jacob and I actually yesterday, we invested hard-earned dollars into the Reds to make the postseason.
We did.
A lot of hard-earned dollars. So
Actually, no hard-earned dollars.
well,
No, we worked hard to
Earned.
get the
we
dollars.
worked hard to get the dollars.
Earned
but
dollars.
The dollars were a free bet.
were a free bet, but the free bet was big. It's a
It was.
$100
It
free
was
bet.
a substantial bet.
So a $100 free bet on the Reds to make the postseason at like plus 250.
Ooh.
So we're believers. We're believers in your Cincinnati Reds.
It is, and look, I was just as excited as pitchers and catchers reporting as the next guy.
Yeah.
Every clip was incredible, and I'm very excited for baseball season. Is this one of the dumbest things we get excited about?
Yes.
They're just going to practice.
Yep.
We're 45 days away from games.
It's like you know how like it's John Rothstein always says you're in a position to be in position. This is the start of the season to start the season to start the season. Like there's like 4 different other starts to this season, and this is just the first one you check off. You just talk about it and you get a little bit more ready for the season. So that's all.
It just means it's close.
It's close.
It just means
It's
it's
close.
close.
That's
and
right.
The other thing is, too, from a content perspective, we want content when practices start. But the problem is, usually the only content you get in February and early March is injury. So we kind of hope that there is no content that we're talking about. One thing I'll go back to, Terry Francona on the Hot Stove League, I remember about a month ago, I think it was a show that you and I just did while the guys were out. It was he was talking about the fact that they're going to ramp up the usage of pitchers throughout spring training. Talked about how they would like to try to get to 100 pitches. They would like to try to ramp that up and not use April as spring training, but to use spring training as spring training. And I think, and again, never went to, I don't know how David Bell ran things, but you'd have to think a very melancholy guy like him wasn't out there, with a lot of energy. I feel like it's going to be much different when Terry Francona, from that perspective, And hot Aprils are a very important thing for the Reds to not shoot themselves in the foot early, something that's been a problem for this team for quite some time. I know it wasn't horrible last year. I think wasn't it May? Well, I think May is where they had that 11-game losing streak. They technically shot themselves in the foot in May. But I think getting off to not just a 500 start in April, but a hot start in April. It's a tough schedule, right? I think we've talked about that. But I do like the idea of them ramping up the usage of pitchers in spring training so that they're ready to go right away, as opposed to using April as extended spring training too. That's something that, of course, he revealed that Derek Johnson brought up, that's something that they would like to do, and he's all for it. Does that make you nervous, though, ramping up pitchers that aggressively in March?
No, because I think you just have to get acclimated to it, and the Reds pitching staff, it seems like they always have issues at some point during the season where they miss significant time, and maybe that's every staff. And I know the Dodgers pitching staff has dealt with it. I think Dustin May has been on the IL for 10 years now, and same deal with Walker Buehler. He was kind of hurt for a while. Walker Buehler no longer there, but it is something where you have to monitor. It's such a long season, and I think getting their arms ready to roll as quickly as possible is how I would do it. Just get ready to go, because at some point, I know, unfortunately, you're going to have an issue with Andrew Abbott. Andrew Abbott down the line the past couple of seasons, he's been very, very good, but then you get to the month of, August, and it's like, all right, his arm is gone. Doesn't have any arm left. So I'm okay with overworking their arms here, getting them ready to go for the season, just because I want to see them go. I don't want to see, the season start with 4 innings of Hunter Green, 4 innings of Nick Lodolo. I want them to go. And usually they start slow anyway, so it's all kind of a moot point.
And no drama this year. I think it's pretty safe to say Hunter Green is our opening day starter, right? Like, don't.
Who knows, man? Brady Singer.
It could be.
David, you realize
I got
David
made
Bell
fun of for being mad about that last year.
Oh, I was mad about it. And for one, Hunter Green was mad about it. David Bell really risked mentally starting that guy off on the wrong foot. Luckily, he it was a Cy Young caliber season last year. But I thought that was the wrong move. I think once you have an ace and once you have the face of your rotation, that's the guy. I think it's a luxury to start the same guy on opening day every year. That means your guy's ready to go, and that means you have a top guy.
Those streaks mean something.
Yeah, and I don't know what Hunter did to warrant not being the starter. I never understood it. No. I was okay with it at the time, and by the way, it worked. Like, Frankie was good that game, so it's okay. But going forward, it will be Hunter Green on opening day for probably the remainder of his career with Cincinnati. No doubt about it. I was looking at this. Bryce Spalding tweeted this yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, a day ago, 2 days ago. It doesn't matter. Relief pitching. Yes, they did just get a bunch of guys, it felt like. You get Taylor Rogers. You get a little bit more confidence in the bullpen. Which reliever right now are you guys most confident in? If you had to pick one. You get Alexis Diaz, Taylor Rogers. You got Pagan in there. Nick Martinez, if you want to count him. Tony Santillan. Is there any name that's like, when this guy comes in, Alexis Diaz, if I didn't say his name, what guy that comes in when you're watching these games that you're like, all right,
because we can't confuse familiar with lockdown.
That's right.
Because I think we all feel comfortable at the bullpen because, a lot of those names we're familiar with. But, man, I don't know. I mean, again, I feel like Nick Martinez is easy. It's the too easy of an answer. But at the same time, $22.5 million.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure to be that guy. When he goes out there, he better be that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's going to be a starter or coming out of the bullpen, but if he is a bullpen guy, he better be one of the best damn bullpen pitchers in baseball because he's paid to be one of the best pitchers in baseball at this point. So, I don't know. I guess Martinez, but at the same time, you also, is it going to be a closer by committee type situation as well?
No, I don't think so. I think that's what we thought last year. Fernando Cruz was in that conversation for about a month or so. No Fernando Cruz this year, and I think you get Ian Jabot back at least as a minor league deal. We'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed, baby.
I want Jabot, baby. I want Jabot. But I don't think it'll be closer by committee. It'll be a Diaz's show until he loses it by himself. There's a chance that happens because I am not confident in Alexis Diaz. I wish I was. He's done his job for the most part. I just don't like having to watch him in the ninth walk the leadoff guy and have him fight his way out of it every single time. Like, it's a testament to that he fights, but I'd like a little bit of consistency. I think Taylor Rogers is my answer. I think Taylor Rogers is a guy that's going to come in. And like Brent Suter's been great for the Reds, a little bit of injury issue, but like I'm very, very excited to see Taylor Rogers be our 8th inning guy. I'm hoping that's what his role will be. I wonder who's going to be the innings eater. You had Ian Jabot, you had Fernando Cruz, maybe it's Jabot again, but who's going to be that guy that comes in consistently in that 6th, 7th high leverage situation right before the end of the game? Because I don't know yet. There's still a lot of things that have to be worked out with this bullpen, and I'm curious to see how it's going to unfold.
I don't know who I have the most confidence in necessarily, but I'm definitely most excited to see Ashcraft in that role.
Yeah,
I think he could really revive his career. I mean, he had some awesome stretches of games on the mound. I mean, good enough stretches. We considered him part of the big three at one point.
Yeah.
So I think he could absolutely be one of those relievers we rely on and could eat those innings in the middle of the game and really be an exciting piece in a 2-inning spurt. And it's not something that he's really shown, obviously, being a starter his whole career. So I think that could be a really good addition, if you will, moving him from starting to the bullpen to really raise the floor of that unit.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll step away for a few moments. We'll close out the conversation. Then the radio side with a little Bearcat college basketball talk. When we come back, they're in action against Utah tonight. ESPN Bet has them as an 8-point favorite. We'll get to all of that when we return. More Off the Bench next. Bearcats are an 8.5-point favorite tonight, not an 8-point.
Big number.
It was 9.5 yesterday. It was 9.5 yesterday. So,
but they got Utah. They're welcoming in Utah coming up later on tonight, 7 o'clock. The tip-off on ESPN Plus.
It's a massive game.
Will you be in attendance?
I will not be. Trace kept making the joke in the chat, and he made it a lot. So I understood the joke about the 7th reference he put in there. But tickets are cheap tonight if you'd like to go to the game. $3 to get in price. So everybody, please feel free to come to Fifth Third. I will not be there. I was just there Saturday. I don't feel like going again tonight. But they need to win it. I mean, it's your back's up against the wall. You have no room for error going forward. You're going to probably have to beat Houston or Iowa State on the road if you want to realistically have a chance to get into the tournament. So it starts tonight. You lost to Utah the last game in one of the most ugly games I've ever seen. Utah is a terrible, terrible team. They got a couple former Bearcats on it as well. The Matson twins or brothers. I don't know if they're twins or brothers. But they're not good. Like, they're not a good rebounding team. They're not a good shooting team. And yet the Bearcats were out-rebounded and outshot in that game. So you need to play like you've played the last 2 games. And if that's the case, they're going to win this game by 30. Utah should never be in this game, not for a second tonight. Not for 1 second.
Now, look, they're coming off that dominating win against BYU. Another game, another rematch of a game that they got blown out the last time those two teams played, and it was a much different result this time. Were you a little surprised? And look, you kind of laughed when I said, hey, are you expecting a similar offensive performance that they had a couple games ago against UCF? They didn't put up 90, put up 84. But for whatever reason, the last 2 games, I don't know if it was the Bob Huggins thing. I don't know if it was. It seemed to me when they lost that 4th straight, you had Sean Kilpatrick that was coming out and putting. I mean, he went on the long Twitter thread that was putting it all out there about the pride of wanting to put that jersey on. Kind of came to the defense of Wes Miller, saying it can't all be on Wes Miller. It just looked like that was the breaking point for that program. Everyone kind of woke up a little bit. They've been a much different team the last 2 games, small sample size. But if they go out there and dominate Utah tonight, I know a bad team, but if they dominate a team at home and win 3 straight after losing 4 straight and do it in convincing fashion, is that going to get someone like you that's been so down on this team this year to maybe start perking back up as we get into the most important time of the season? Yeah,
100%. And I think this would be, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this would be the first 3-game win streak in the Big 12 for UC. So if you're able to do it, good for them, because I mean UCF is a bubble team. BYU is a team I'd be scared to face in the tournament just because of how good they are shooting wise. They've got an NBA pick on their roster as well. Utah is a team, again, I don't respect Utah. You just got to beat them, and if you're able to win 3 in a row in the Big 12, I'll be more than happy. The last game they played, I think think, was that the game they were out-rebounded by a million? 41-23. That was the game West said they improved rebounding. They were out-rebounded 41-23 to a team that's not very good at rebounding. Bearcats shot 39% in that game, 8 of 22 from beyond the arc. Free throws, 14 of 22. 14 of 22 and a three-point loss. Make your free throws, make your shots. Turnover-wise, they've been okay the past couple of games. It just comes down to, like, in maybe it's like the old notion that they're due to score. They were scoring in the 40s, low 50s, for mid 60s for a majority of the season, and it's just because Jizzle, Seamoss, and Day and all these guys that were supposed to make shots weren't making shots. Well, now they are, right? I mean, Day's scored has been, if he hasn't been the leading scorer, he's been one of the leading scorers each of the past 3 games. He's been absolutely phenomenal. And you have Jizzle, who's been making a ton of shots. He made 6 threes on Saturday. He hadn't made 3 threes in a game this season. He made 6 on Saturday. I look for Aziz to have a solid game tonight. I'm not the biggest Aziz guy. I wish he could be a better basketball player. But if you're able to hold your own defensively, get a couple boards, then you've done your job for me. And it just comes down to Jizzle and Seamoss making shots. Seamoss has been brutal. I mean, Seamoss Lukosius has been brutal to watch. You can't trust him to make any sort of jump shot whatsoever, and unfortunately, that's his entire role on the team. So it's a massive game. It's a massive game. I'll feel a little bit of confidence that you're able to win this because up until this point, they have not really won a game that they should have won. They should have beaten Kansas State in the league opener. You know, you should have beat Arizona at home. You came all the way back to win that game. You lost that one. And just going down the line, they should have beaten Utah. They should have just beaten so many teams this year. They should have beaten Kansas. Kansas played the worst game maybe in the history of that school. Maybe they scored 50 points in that game. The Bearcats scored 40. Like that's what we're talking about right now. And do I believe in them? No, not really. But I do think there's some interesting things that go into play with these metrics that I just don't understand. Every metric loves the Bearcats. And it's just like you have to watch the team. You have to watch them. But clearly, on paper, the roster's good. They just have to play up to standard. And the last 2 games they have.
No at-large opportunity. It's just they need to win the Big 12? Or can they play themselves back into an at-large?
80%? What are they, like 85%?
Well, according to ESPN, that guy, I got to try to get him on. But according to the ESPN thing, they got like an 80% chance. But realistically,
near lock, I think was the term.
Yeah, you'd have to win every single game and split Houston or Iowa State on the road. Both on the road.
You mentioned that St. John's, number 9 team in the country, by the way. They are on the road at Villanova tomorrow night. Xavier in action at Providence. So we'll keep an eye on those. Dayton out of the A-10, they're in action tomorrow night against Fordham. And we'll see if their coach throws another hissy fit after the game. I got into it with, not really got into it, I irked one of the media members in Dayton because I think Anthony Grant has the most cushiony job. Like Wes Miller, like people like, when they don't play well, you guys go after them, right? Like you call Wes Miller out. Media calls Wes Miller out. That's how it usually is. For Dayton to be a basketball city, when their team doesn't live up to expectations, the media in town just constantly puts out puff pieces on him, and it drives me nuts. I'm like, the guy is constantly underachieving. He's had 2 NCAA appearances in 8 years, and their athletic director comes out all the time and says our expectations every year is NCAA tournament. And this is going to be a year where you had 2 top 10 wins. You were 2-2. You had 4 games against the top 10, and you were 2-2 in those. And the losses were almost as impressive as the wins when you consider the fact that you played. Obviously, was it? Why am I drawing a blank? Iowa State so well in Maui. North Carolina had a double-digit lead on. Of course, that was technically a bad loss because you let them come all the way back to win. But you played with these teams that you proved to everyone that you could play with, and now you can't beat simple teams in the A-10. So I get so tired of hearing about them wanting to move to the Big East. You can't handle teams in the A-10. Why do you want to move to the Big East? It doesn't make any sense. Take care of business in the A-10. Prove that you could prove that you could dominate a weaker conference before you want to go swim in a much deeper sea with much bigger sharks. You're a minnow. You are not as big as you think. It drives me absolutely up the wall when it comes to that. And he had the nerve, Anthony Grant did, to pop off at the media after the game and get real short with them and interrupt them and not let them finish their sentences. I was like, maybe that's not the smartest idea, considering that the media in town has literally protected him during his entire underachieving run as head coach of the Dayton Flyers. It's as simple as that. You could bring up the 2020 season. You could bring up the fact that, he's a national coach of the year and all that. If you look at his time at Alabama, you look at his time at VCU, and you look at his time in Dayton, there's only been 1 year that he has been able to pull that off, and that's when you had, of course, National Player of the Year in Obi Toppin. You take Obi Toppin off, that's an outlier season. He is who he is. This is who he is. They lose games that they shouldn't. All right, they don't get at-large bids. I know they're coming off of an at-large bid season last year, but that was even a season that halfway through they were still underachieving, and that's when you had an NBA player in Deron Holmes. 2 years ago, you missed the NCAA tournament. You had 2 NBA players on your roster. Tumani Kamara, by the way, killing it with the Portland Trailblazers. I mean, that guy's just continuing to get better and better. How you had Deron Holmes and Tumani Kamara on that roster and didn't make the NCAA tournament is just wild to me. But that's why when people say, you talk a lot of Bearcat basketball, I enjoy talking about the Bearcats because there's expectations there. And when they don't get met, you have former players calling out the program and defending the program at the same time. You have media calling out the program because there's expectations and standards, and I highly suggest Dayton gets those standards and starts living up to them because I'm tired of hearing about it. And then when I criticize it, I'm the bad guy. I'm not the bad guy in this particular situation. Apparently, I have higher standards for your team than you do. There you go. Rant over.
The A10's terrible.
It is, and they can't.
I don't mean to be that. I mean, we got 3-8, 3-7, 4-7, 4-7, 4-6, 5-7, 5-6, 5-6, 5-5. Dayton is 6-5 in the conference. They're 4th. I mean, that's just.
How do you 6-5 in a bad conference when you were 2-2 against top 10 teams? You beat Marquette. You beat UConn.
Yeah.
You hung with North Carolina. You were right there with Iowa State. Iowa State, one of the best teams in the country. Like, what? That's bad. You had something there. There was something there, and no one's hurt. It's a healthy roster. There's no excuse.
Lost to St. Bonaventure by 20.
Yes, they've been blown out twice in A10 play. But, yes, let's get to the Big East, please.
Yeah, that's tough.
So that Rick Pitino can coach circles around Anthony Grant. Yes, please get to the Big East. Please.
I want more Kinner versus the Dayton media. I want that.
That's a good genre.
I
enjoy
more of that.
Kinner versus the Dayton media a lot more than I enjoy Kinner versus Jacob.
Correct.
That's more
I don't
fun
cuss
for
at
everyone.
Dayton media. By the way, the crazy thing is that wasn't even directed at Dayton media. I was actually defending Dayton media. That's how soft that was of his response when he goes, well, how about you come to and ask the tough questions? I'm like, actually, Anthony Grant used to come on the show. I asked questions he didn't like and then refused to come on moving forward. I'm not a reporter. I'm not going to the games to ask him those questions.
I think I reread it a couple times because I'm like, I don't understand the response. I think the quote was
I did tough. I shouldn't have put it in quotations. I'll admit that the way I positioned it could be read as me taking a shot at the media. I think that's a fair.
But you said the one time that you guys are critical of them, or like because I guess that's where they got, because you're saying they never asked critical questions, but you were saying they did ask critical questions, and when that happened, he turned on the media, and I didn't understand the response. But to each their own. I understand misinterpretation of words.
I've also, and David Jablonski, by the way, is a hell of a reporter. He does a good job. I understand that I upset him, but I've always complimented him. I said, I wish my team had a reporter that covers my team the way he covers the Dayton Flyers. I don't think there's a reporter out there that does a better job covering a team than he does, but I thought he got pretty sensitive about that. Because it's a lot of humoristic. They call it the Dayton Daily News is the news. They call it the Dayton Flyer Daily News for a reason, because they just protect the hell out of that program when they constantly underachieve. So go Bearcats. The bottom line is go Bearcats. Go Wright State Raiders. Oh, I'm going to go see your guy, Doug Gottlieb, this week.
Oh,
I'm going to be in Green Bay this weekend. Yes.
Make sure, okay.
If Wright State, they cannot lose. Wright State cannot give Green Bay
Let's
their
check in on
first
Green Bay
conference
basketball.
win.
They've lost how many in a row? 20?
I don't know, but he was at
24?
Radio Row.
Yes,
so,
I was just going to say, did you know he went to Radio Row?
Yeah, did some interviews.
Oh, that's so good, man. And when they lose, man, they lose. They haven't won a game. Let me just check real quick. I know nobody wants to talk about Green Bay basketball, but the last
It's more about Doug Gottlieb, and he's being talked about all over the place, so that's fair.
They won on November 19th.
Jesus.
That was their last win.
It's February.
That was their last win. Isn't that crazy?
It's February. Mid-February.
I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but boy, it just didn't happen. Michigan Tech at home.
But my fear about Sunday is Wright State losing to Green Bay.
That would be a nightmare. That would be
a nightmare.
Well, you got NKU before you, so let's see if NKU can choke it. We'll see. We're bringing Rick Broering on Thursday. So that'll be a preview of Green Bay. I imagine Rick's going to say NKU is going to win that game.
They should.
We need Green Bay to lose out. That's what we need. We need you and NKU to take care of business and have them lose out everything, because one of the worst college basketball seasons of all time. Has a team ever gone over? And I don't know this answer. Is it
Detroit last year was like 0-26, 0-27.
Okay.
They ended up getting a win late, and I don't remember if they finished with 1 or 2 wins. But Detroit was really bad last year. They had one fan there at the game, and they went viral because when Detroit got their first win of the season, the one fan stormed the floor.
That's right. 2 wins, it's historically bad. Historic.
It's not good, but it's about the process.
That's right.
As Doug Gottlieb says, it's all about the process. All right, we're out of
The
time.
Citadel Bulldogs are 0-12 currently in the Southern Conference.
No. Wait, what's their
Overall 5-18.
Okay.
But does their coach go to Radio Row? He did, Elliot. He was doing a show at Radio Row, just interviewing all these big stars.
There's
and
another
stuff.
winless conference team, but this one's a little funnier. South Carolina's 0-10 in the SEC. They're 10-13 overall.
Was the SEC good?
Yeah.
They're 0-10? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 0-10 in conference play,
How about
10-13 overall.
God, what a conference.
Brutal.
It's insane.
All right, guys, that wraps it up for us on the radio side. Thank you for tuning in. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. So the Reds made a move,
Another move.
and they're going hard now. They're going hard in the paint. I like it.
Reds have signed Scott Barlow. Scott Barlow to a 1-year deal worth $2.5 million, according to Jesse Rogers of ESPN. Barlow had a 4.25 ERA in 63 games last year with the Guardians and a career 3.49 ERA in 365 games. A year's worth of games and a 3.49. We'll take it. I'll take it.
Tito's just going through that Rolodex,
Oh, yeah.
seeing who did it well for him in Cleveland.
Oh yeah, any
Bring 'em down here.
Cleveland Guardian, bring him home.
I like
bring
that.
him home to Cincinnati.
I like that model.
What was that? Was that model last week that said the Reds were going to finish in last?
Pacoda.
Pacoda. So
Elliot's
Kirby,
model.
I wish I had it in front of me. Kirby had kind of went and did some research, and apparently the Indians, during his time managing them, were also projected to finish very low in their division at times. And, Francona-led teams finished well above the projections heading into the season. So we got that going for us.
We got it. We're ready
He's an
to roll.
overachiever, that Terry Francona. It technically is.
If we didn't, let me ask you guys this: the public perception of the Reds, I think, is pretty high, like national media wise. If the Reds didn't bring in Terry Francona, what would they be regarded as right now? What would the
Skip
national
Schumacher
media be saying?
Yeah, if Skip
if
Schumacher,
Skip Schumacher came to town.
and that wouldn't have been the worst hire. That would have been that's the hire we all were kind of leaning towards, I think, right? Like, if Skip Schumacher was the manager, would you have been okay with that? Not over Terry Francona,
Oh, no,
but
I would not have been okay with it.
Okay.
No, I would not have.
So but that was most likely, I would assume that's option B for that front office along those lines. I'm assuming Benavidez was not option B. I don't know.
I hope not.
I would pray not.
Honestly,
for
with how this
Benavidez?
offseason goes, I doubt they had an option B. But they were getting Terry Francona.
They got him. I mean, they got him right away. They got him immediately.
I would imagine that's
So-
how
David Bell got fired with 5 games left in the season. I thought that was a slap in the face and disrespectful. And at the time, I said the only way that this makes sense and I can get on board is if it's because they had a plan. And that plan was, and it worked out because they just happened to be playing in Cleveland, I think, in one of those final games. And it was no surprise the front office had made that trip. And the next thing you know, bada bing, bada boom. It's a signed, sealed, delivered. But that's a very good question. Francona is doing a lot of the heavy lifting with the perception of this team. I would love to
agree.
see what they were. And, would they make, if Terry Francona is not the manager, do they make the moves that they did? Do they make the same exact moves?
Another really good question, and I'd venture to say no, they wouldn't, because I imagine Terry's having some say in who's coming to his team. I don't know what kind of say that is, but I imagine it's in some capacity. I think that the perception of this team would be that it would be a Pittsburgh Pirates type situation. There's a couple of young pieces that you can get excited about. But if you expect them to contend, you're fooling yourself. With Terry Francona, it's a completely different outlook because Terry Francona has taken the Cleveland Guardians to places where I don't think anybody thought. He is a world champion with the Red Sox. This is a guy that's been able to do it and has been respected and loved by, I think, every player that's ever played for him. And that helps the Reds. That helps the public perception here because you have a team that fought 2 years ago, a team that nobody expected to be as good as they were, a team with a 65 win total projection. And you sneak into a place where you probably shouldn't have been. Matt McClain, Noelvi, Ellie, they all come up. And it's like, all right, we got a roster here. And you finish the season above 500. Down the stretch, you could have made the playoffs if you were a little bit healthier, I'd say. And then last year, they drastically underperformed what the expectations were because of injury and, I would say, unfortunate circumstance. So this year, you have a team that, if they play like that team from 2 years ago, with the additions that we've made, you bring in Taylor Rogers, you bring in Gavin Lux, you bring in Brady Singer. You have a chance right now to fight. So if the Reds are going to be the scrappy underdog, I'm more than happy with being the scrappy underdog. I think Craig put it in the chat. He was projected to have a losing season 3 times. He ended those 3 seasons with 85, 93, and 93 wins.
I'd really go for an 85-win season at the very least. This
85, I still believe can win this division. I'm not going to buy the Cubs winning 90
I want
games.
more. I'm just saying I hope
Correct.
the floor is.
Oh, I would love it if the floor was that. I don't think that's the case, but it's.
I wish.
I think that the Reds have a chance this year. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, and until I have to believe
That
otherwise.
was your nickname in high school too, right?
Cautiously optimistic. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Also, E-Train. Shout out. I think
Never forget.
I think Nate Seltzer's dad gave me that nickname. I think E-Train was. I think Mr. Seltzer.
Where
gave
did
me
the
that nickname.
zebra come from? See, I
Zebra came from Mo Egger. Zebra. I wore a zebra necklace one day, and Mo Egger's like, "Was that a zebra necklace?" I'm like, "Yeah." Okay, you're the zebra. So that's not a great story, but that is where it came from.
But it made sense.
It does. Yeah. The Reds this year, I think the key will be health, and if you're able to stay healthy, you're able to keep the roster that we have right now throughout a majority of this season. I do think they're better than the Brewers. I do think they're going to be better than the St. Louis Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Pirates. I don't think they're better than the Cubs on paper, but I do think the Reds have owned the Cubs the past couple of years, and if you're able to own them again this year, I don't see why they can't make the playoffs or make a run at it. I think they're good enough with health. But again, without Terry Francona, I don't know if I'm saying that. I really don't. I really don't think I am.
This season, 44 days away. It's painful.
It's a long time.
Kellen Moore to the Saints officially done.
I don't know. Good for him.
Doesn't move the needle for me at all.
It doesn't. I think that's a horrible job. I don't know.
Terrible
what do you think?
job.
Well, let's just say if it was a good job,
Terrible.
is Kellen Moore good? What do you think of Kellen Moore?
The nothing burger. I mean, I think he did a decent job, obviously, in Philly. They won a Super Bowl, but, I mean, Chargers took a step back offensively last year. The Cowboys didn't have a great, last year under him when he was their OC in Dallas. They obviously fired him. So, I never really understood why he was at the top of the list for coordinator interviews. But going to the Saints, and I guess he's going to try to coach Derek Carr and his $40 million cap hit to a Super Bowl.
Brutal. That roster is brutal. Good luck to him.
Kellen Moore to Dallas would have made more sense if Dallas would have done that after swinging and missing on.
Would have been crazy. It would have made
prime
more. I
time.
guess a little bit more sense.
Would have made
I
sense.
think they
Crazy.
somehow made a crazier hire.
Yeah, that's true. No, you're right.
Assistant coach Brian. He's now known.
But you know how
he's
this-
now known. His name is now Dallas Cowboys head coach.
Brian.
You know how this works, though, right? Like Dallas will be good next year.
Oh yeah.
Like that's how this usually works more times than not. But then Dallas will be good next year, and then they'll be bad the next year, and then it'll just be back and forth. But good as in 9-10 wins, whatever that means for Dallas. By the way, real quick, to go back to the Reds, Joey Votto's disappeared. Like a health and wellness check needs to be sent to check on our guy Joey Votto. I think he's just been scrubbing his arm for months.
Poor guy got a bad deal on that tattoo, and I think he's just trying to figure a way to get it removed, or I don't know what he'll do. But poor guy. I hope he enjoys retirement. I'd like him to be a coach on the Reds. I think there's some role for him in Cincinnati still. I would like him to be a part of this young group of guys. If it's not as a player, I'd like it to be as a coach.
I thought the front office had let it, like they were open to Joey Votto being a part of the organization in some capacity.
I'm sure they will.
And by the way, we don't know what's happening with the TV deal. They still have not finalized. They have not released anything on the broadcast teams yet, or like even the post-game show. or anything like that.
No,
Like,
I
wonder if he could play a role there. I think he's beyond entertaining in that role. I would love to see him. But what do you think he benefits the franchise more in some kind of role with the coaching staff, or would you love to see him in the media role?
I'd love to see him in both. I'd love him to be a part of the team. God willing, if the Reds ever won a World Series, I would like him to get one. And the best chance for him to get that is through the coaching staff. The broadcast thing is interesting. They haven't announced who's going to be on the pre- and post-game show. They haven't announced who the official broadcaster is. Can't imagine they would take away Sadak. I mean, that would make no sense whatsoever. If the Reds have any say at all, like
Right.
John Sadak will be your broadcaster. I don't think there's any doubt in that one. But I don't know about Sam LeCure. I don't know about guys that I like. I don't know Barry Larkin. There's so many questions there.
Well, Barry's. I think he might take Terry's job. Right?
Yeah. As you
Manager,
talking about as
manager
of
in
the club?
waiting. Manager
Yeah.
in waiting.
Yeah, that's about right. That's what a lot of people expected. I mean, that's so silly. Yeah, I'm excited to see what it'll be. I hope maybe a couple new faces I'd like to see, but I really want Sam LeCure back. Sadak's loved by the city, so bring Sadak back, and we have our radio guys. Good news is the radio guys are employees of the Cincinnati Reds, so obviously we'll have our Cowboy and Tommy back.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Like LeCure and those guys, they didn't make the trip for the caravan.
Yeah.
And because all that stuff is still up in the air and being decided.
Don't know yet. Don't know anything yet.
I hope
I think
LeCure's
they
back.
announced.
I
think they
LeCure.
did announce the prices. I think it's $20 a month for the Reds.
Well, yeah, you got to get to the important things first. The money. How much are we going to pay?
I think it's about $20 a month if you want to watch the Reds via Bally, whatever the TV channel is called now, FanDuel Sportsnet or Bally Sportsnet, whoever owns that. If you don't have access to that channel, I think it's like $20 a month. You'll be able to pay. I think we were talking about, our group chat was talking about pooling money. We'll just all put in $20 and we'll see how many, or we'll all put in $5 and see how many guys we can get in. But yeah, I listen. I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll see what the Reds look like with Terry Francona, but I don't want to walk too far away from the line that, my take is that managers don't matter as much as many people probably believe. I want to be wrong about that. I really do. I want to be blatantly wrong that managers don't matter as much as other people think. Because if Terry Francona can lead this team to the playoffs, we're in for a special treat here in these next 4 years.
I think in order for the Reds to have the season that we want them to have, we need to be wrong about the manager not mattering.
Yeah, we have to be
They
wrong.
didn't make the personnel moves to a point where this roster is just like that much better. If this team's going to win 90 games, then it has to be the manager doing a lot of that heavy lifting. So hopefully Terry Francona is that outlier to that point and can do that.
Yeah, and I hope that Francona has success with the Reds, which we anticipate that to be the case, that people around Major League Baseball realize managers can have an impact on the team instead of just going with the status quo. Just come in, hold the iPad, and just follow like it's a manual. When this happens, you push this button. When this happens, you push that button. To let managers use more of their gut. Again, I'm done with the analytics argument. Analytics aren't going anywhere. You could still use them, but also manage the situation, not the numbers by themselves a little bit. And I think Francona balances both pretty well. But yeah, I think the archaic arguments about analytics, I'm done with those. Like that's a thing of the past. If you haven't got on board with that yet, it's passing you by. So either way, but that run, I mean, we do have a little bit of time left. But do you guys have anything else to touch on? What is going on the Bengals front? Do we have any Chatterbox Bengals coming up?
Well, we're getting together the schedule for pre-combine. We're going to put some stuff out before that. Draft prospects to keep an eye out for, where the Bengals should be watching, where Bengals fans should be watching for the combine. And then we'll do a recap of all that again at the beginning of March, right after that combine. But probably for the next couple of weeks, it'll just be if breaking news happens, you'll know where to find Craig and I.
Did you and Craig jump on the news about your guy Burton getting evicted again?
We did not.
I don't think
that's
that's breaking.
We're gonna
news,
leave
but
the legalese off the live streams, and then once that figures itself out, we'll probably put something out. But yeah, I mean, how many times can a professional athlete get evicted from an apartment?
And
right now, we're working it too.
And that's a good point about.
I mean, what an all-time horrible draft pick by the Cincinnati Bengals. One of the worst ever.
And it's one. You're right. Like, wait to find out what happened. But I think it's just one of those. Even if it comes out that it was nothing, it's something because we're talking about it.
Yeah.
It's like he just can't seem to stay out of the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. Like, there's just no positive publicity surrounding him whatsoever. It's just
All he had to do was show up, Kenner. Like, all he had to do was just be present. That's literally the only requirement that was asked of him. And he was unable to do that to probably the most degree you can not do that.
the opportunity was right there for him. Like this T. Higgins thing, you don't want to see T go, but it would be a lot easier if the receiver you took high in the draft last year looked like the promising guy to take over some of that production load. You'd still be looking at a replacement for T, but to balance out, to spread out that production, because I don't think you could replace T with just one guy, and if you can, that's a good find. Burton was never expected to be T's complete replacement from a production standpoint, but man, to take some of that, replacement would have been huge. But yeah, he sets them back if T ultimately goes. I know we listened to that clip yesterday. Didn't sound promising, but we'll see. I'm excited for this offseason. I know you guys don't want bad things to happen.
I am too.
I'm nervous.
We're going to find out exactly where this team stands for probably roughly the next 5 to 10 years. So.
When do you think we know about T? When do you think? Not like no, like when is going to be the first thing that drops? That's as far as like next in the sequence of things to happen. Like I'm trying to think of how to word that. Like when will we know what the direction of the organization is? Like when T just comes out and demands let me go or trade me or something, or
there's
what?
going to be some Adam Schefter, some article, Ben Baby. Somebody's going to come out and say the Bengals and T are either close in agreement or they're not close on agreement. There'll be some sort of that pops out. I'd imagine in the next few weeks, maybe next month. I don't know how long it's going to take.
The league year starts a month from tomorrow, March 12th. So we will know whether the Bengals are bringing T. Higgins or not back or not by March 12th. I think if he's not coming back, we'll start to hear the trade discussions or tag discussions or whatever that is around combine time, because that's when all these GMs and everyone are together, and that's when I think the bubblings of moving on from him for draft capital could potentially come into play if they do go the double tag route. I really don't know what their plan is. At this point, if they don't tag T. Higgins, I'm going to be pretty upset.
But, that might be you have to predict the offseason timeline for the Bengals on tomorrow's show. It's going to be Jacob's timeline.
There's going to be more hype around the Bengals heading into next season in a while, I would say, or it's going to be the lowest point we've had since Burrow. Because if we don't have T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, I have a hard time believing the vibes are going to be high. This summer, I have a hard time during the preseason. It's going to be the vibes will be high, but if they bring them both back, I do think this team is really, really good. You fix your defense just a little bit, and I think Al Golden will fix them just a little bit. You hit on a couple picks in the draft, and I think the team is going to be fine. Seventh in Super Bowl odds or something
along those lines.
They're a good team. And if you're able to figure it out just a little bit, they're going to be fighting for the Super Bowl.
All right, well, that wraps it up for us today. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Hopefully talk about a Bearcats win.
God willing.
3 straight.
God willing.
Don't call it a win streak.
Don't call it a comeback.
We'll be right back tomorrow.